will determine judiciary's credibility, and that's what we'll be looking at this morning as the country continuously awaits this crucial moment that is pretty much historic. And it is the Supreme Court that will decide whether to nullify or to uphold what it is that Wafula Chebukati declared and said that Deputy President William Ruto is the president-elect. That is what we'll be looking at this morning as we await what it is that will be the judgment that is from the Supreme Court. Historic moment for us right here in the country, and of course all eyes and all our cameras will be directed towards the Supreme Court to make sure that we give you wall-to-wall coverage of this moment today. Indeed, the final day, as of course enshrined in the Constitution, 14 days of this process that, well, the judges would otherwise argue is a process that is quite intense and would require perhaps more than a year. But then we'll be looking at what they decide this morning as we get to understand whether we are headed for another election or whether it's a done deal. My name is Linda Alela. Welcome on board. And this is Morning Cafe right here on TV47. Good morning. I hope yours was a great weekend as we look forward to greatness and a great week ahead. Keep it right here. The hashtag is Morning Cafe at Linda_Alela TV47 KE across all our social media platforms as well. Another hashtag, Kenya Decides. We'll be sampling some of your comments as we continue with the broadcast later on to engage Dr. Barak Muluka as well as Honorable Farah Malim, and not forgetting Wakili Aluo Chier Isaac and equally Professor Masharia Monene for this candid conversation all the way to 9 a.m. And then again, hopefully, then we'll be crossing over to the Supreme Court for the final proceedings of the presidential results petition. We take a moment, of course, to get straight into this business as we take a look at what the papers detail this morning, as well as some of the stories that have been prepared by my team. And that is where then we begin the broadcast right here. So we start off with what the papers detail this morning. It's more or less about the Supreme Court and what then is expected for the day. And it is portal versus process. Both Ruto and Raila have said they will accept the Supreme Court verdict and findings, and it is the D-Day today. We await to see just what then will be the final judgment by the judges and whether indeed these two gentlemen, as they have promised, will make good their word in terms of making sure that they go by that. But just what will it mean for the IBC? What will it mean for that quest of democracy and for the two gentlemen as well as their very own supporters? David Maraga's historic 2017 ruling annulling Kenyatta's election victory was grounded not in proof of actual rigging, but a finding of so many things wrong with the conduct of the polls that the results then could not stand today. Martha Koome's decision, the bench, of course, faces the same question as it sits to decide whether Raila Odinga once again has a case. This as captured on page 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. It is the main story of the day. Also, as we await to see then what the Parliament is set to do this week in terms of making sure that the House then begins. This also is left for President Uhuru Kenyatta to make that historic decision. And if the Supreme Court then will nullify this, it would mean that Kenyans in 60 days should proceed to another process of election. In the event that it upholds what it is that the IBC chairperson then declared, Wafula Chebukati, then it would mean that the new president will be sworn in, or the president-elect, Deputy President William Ruto, then will be sworn in on the 13th of this month. It's a question of wait and see, but as you can see on your screens, it is on what it is that Raila Odinga claimed as the petitioner, or the main petitioner, and also what was Chebukati's call, and equally as the main respondent, what then Deputy President William Ruto's team presented in terms of defending themselves. And so this is the key story of the day. Also, as we take a look at what played out in terms of that historic moment of the world of football, 3-1 Manchester United ends Arsenal's unbeaten run. Gunners fall in 4-goal thriller at Old Trafford. Trafford, a story captured on page 39. We all know that eyes were all set across the global fraternity to watch this historic match as well, and such was the case right here in the country. Away from it, Kenyan extradited to US in poaching drug charges. Abdi Hussein Ahmed was arrested in Meru last week. This is captured on page 12 of the Daily Nation, and also away from other stories that are there. But indeed, the biggest stories and the majority of it finds itself, or majority of the stories that have been captured on the paper are more or less about what it is that will be the Supreme Court verdict, and will be following keenly to check on the same, and as well make sure that we update you accordingly. The Standard newspaper: shock of members of parliament as allowances are slashed further. This is a story that has been captured on page 10. Remember, this 13th parliament is coming in at a point where the courts also had declared the CDF amounts as unconstitutional, and some members of parliament have vowed to push to make sure that these adjustments are made in favor of them. That is to make sure that the CDF funds then are brought back. Also at a point where there were a lot of slashing in terms of the finances that members of parliament get to enjoy as allowances, but then again also adjustments on their salaries. And this time around, members of parliament allowances during foreign and domestic trips also have been slashed, and the legislators on trips or to the US will now get about 79,091 shillings from 143,999 per day. You might need to underline that, per day. The decision was reached following a Gazette notice by the Salaries Commission. Will be looking to see what this would mean for them, and whether indeed they would buy to the same. If they counter, then they have to justify why they proceed to counter. But yes, eyes on the main day, Judgment Day we call it, or the Standard calls it. The country today will know whether the election of President-elect William Ruto will stand, or if it will be nullified. Both decisions have serious repercussions that will reverberate long or after the Supreme Court declaration, and therefore will be engaging these experts to tell us what they think will be these repercussions that we speak of, whether it is in favor of IEBC Chairperson Wafula Chebukati, as well as the IEBC itself, and also as well as Deputy President William Ruto, or in favor of the main petitioners, or the petitioners that have presented their case countering and challenging this ruling. Page 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 of the Standard newspaper, the pages that then would detail this very story that we are looking at as well. This matter of football does not, fail to appear. And so for Arsenal, the devil is in the details as well, captured on page 40 of the sports page, and that is on the Standard newspaper, as pertaining to just what way forward, especially for those ones that are, lovers or fanatics of the question of football. In the global fraternity, US election conspiracies find fertile ground in conferences, and people can't shake the belief that voting machines are being manipulated. Pretty much of the case that is playing out in the country, and a poll shows that about 2/3 of Republicans say they do not think Biden was legitimately elected. Interesting times as to the quest for democracy. And 20 people killed in attack on food convoy. 20 people, that is including women and children, have been killed and food aid destroyed after militants attacked several vehicles in Somalia's central Hiran region. They put a bomb while people were in the car and blew it up. And the region's governor told this to the BBC Somali service. This is quite unfortunate. Also, the question of unrest and attacks by the terrorists still ongoing in this space of the Horn of Africa. as the global fraternity continue to put up the fight as to question of, just taming the acts of terrorism. Mali releases about 3 Ivorian soldiers. 46 are still held. 3 female Ivorian soldiers arrived home, that is late on Saturday, after being detained for nearly 2 months in Mali, while 46 others remain jailed in a case that has heightened tensions between the West Africans and their neighbors. Also, this is the main, these are the stories that have been captured. That is on the international scene. America's secret, ex-presidents and precedented disregard of norms also. And we're talking about President Donald Trump. This is FBI agents who searched Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort on August the 8th found more than about 100 documents with classification markings. And well, the Justice Department has painted a portrait of our indifference for the rules on a scale that some thought inconceivable after establishment of the Presidential Records Act in 1978. It's not all rosy for Trump. He still faces some difficulties as pertaining to his reign and also how he found himself in power. And this such has brought him to levels of, having court battles that are dealt with differently and taking, as usual, more time than expected. Obama wins Emmy for his narration in National Parks series. Congratulations to him. And on the Vatican side, John Paul I a step closer to sainthood after beatification. The ceremony in St. Peter's Square, as captured right here, constituted the last formal step in the Vatican before possible sainthood. And last year, Pope Francis approved a miracle attributed to the intercession of John Paul first. And we shelve what the papers detail this morning. Not much of news has been captured therein, as we await to see to it that then we get that verdict from the Supreme Court. And away from it, what story do we go with first, Mr. Director, as we take a recap on all this? All right, so we cross over to Busia County, and while the final verdict, that is in the presidential petition, is expected to be announced, well, by the Supreme Court, traders in Busia have expressed their anxieties over the nation's stability, and they are claiming that their businesses have been slow since the August 9th election. And the residents are, however, urging Kenyans to maintain peace to make sure that we have posterity and salvage the country's image as well as the economy that has seen Kenyans grapple with the high cost of living.
Tufanye election kubwa ya Kenya. Tumekuwa na shida sana. Hatujakuwa na kazi. Wageni wamekataa kuja. Mahali samaki inatokea pia itoki. Watu wa kununua samaki hata ukiangalia soko hakuna watu. Sasa hii election ni kama ya Kenya, hii ni kama imetuletea shida kubwa.
Tulienda kutumbukiza kura tukachagua viongozi na shida ikawa mbele. Sasa kazi hatuna kwa hii soko ya Busia. Manake hii soko yetu ya samaki tunafanya kazi na wenye kutoka nje wakija kununua samaki zetu. Sasa hao pia wamegopa kuingia sababu hawajui nini itafanyika.
Naomba hiyo koti ya upeo itusaidie na mambo ikuwe ya haraka, hata kesho wamalize. Kwa maana sasa sisi tunaumia tangu tupige kura, sijui kama kura tulipiga ilikuwa shida gani. Hii maneno ya kusema sijui nini turudie mpaka miezi 2 zote, watu hapa watakuwa kama kusakufa njaa.
And a group of women who vied for political seats in the last general elections but were not successful have called for national and county governments to consider offices or to consider them for public appointments in this particular offices, saying that they have demonstrated their leadership capabilities by coming out to, first of all, present their names to represent Kenyans, speaking when they converged for a team-building exercise. The women say that about 93% did not clinch their seats, and therefore appointing them would go a long way to achieving the 2/3 gender principle. They have now vowed to intensify their lobby by directly interacting with governors in all the 47 counties on the gender agenda.
earned reputation of accomplished careers and gave them opportunity to demonstrate their leadership abilities over time. But when they vie and are not elected, these once vibrant women leaders are intentionally left out of public appointments by their opponents, exposing them to all sorts of economic vulnerabilities ever emerging.
What has been happening over the years is that when women vie for political positions, they are never assimilated in government. They are actually named as political exposed persons.
Tokeza katika ngazi mbalimbali zikiwemo ngazi za ugavana, ngazi za useneta, ngazi za ubunge, wakilishi wodi na hata katika wakilishi wanawake. Wanawake hao wote wanaojitokeza kuwania nafasi mbalimbali kama wenzangu walivyotangulia kusema ni kwamba wote wana kipawa, wana uwezo, wamekubalika. Ni kura tu hazikutosha. Kwa hivyo inamaanisha kufikia hivi sasa wamo wengi ambao tayari hawakuweza kuchukua nafasi za uongozi, lakini wako tayari kabisa kuhakikisha kwamba wanazidi kusaidia katika kuikuza nchi yetu ya Kenya. Na kwa hivyo sisi sote hapa kilio chetu kimoja ama kusema sisi sote tunaomba katika serikali mpya ambayo inakuja hivi sasa ni kuangalia hawa wanawake wote waliojitokeza ili kutumikia nchi yetu ya Kenya, kutumikia kaunti zetu ambazo sisi wengi tunawakilisha hapa, wamo tayari kuhakikisha kwamba watakuwa katika nafasi za zitakazotolewa. Kwa hivyo sisi tunaomba serikali mpya pamoja na serikali za kaunti kuweza kuhakikisha wale wote waliojitokeza hasa wanawake wamepewa kipaumbele katika kuzingatia hizi nafasi zilizojitokeza katika serikali hii mpya.
Indeed, they should be appreciated. Well, farmers in Rift Valley have been encouraged to take advantage of the long rains being experienced in their region and proceed to plant short-term maturing crops as they await the harvest of the maize. This will enhance countries and the counties and the country's food security, as our reporter Boniface Baraza details.
As heavy rains continue to ravage North Rift region, farmers in the area have been asked to embrace planting crops that take short time to mature, including sweet potatoes, vegetables, and beans, among other crops. James Kanini is an agricultural expert from Apollo Agriculture.
Tuhimiza wakulima wetu ambao wako katika eneo hili waweze kutumia nafasi na mvua ambayo inanyesha wakati wa sasa kuongeza mazao yao, mavuno yao pale shambani kwa kupanda maharagwe. Letu kuu leo kama Apollo Agriculture ni kuhamasisha wakulima wetu na kutuhakikishia wale wengi ambao tuna mashamba tuko na chakula.
In addition, Kanini, who is the head of the research unit in the organization, said that apart from ensuring the nation's food security, these crops will guarantee farmers sufficient income.
Wao kwa kupanda maharagwe msimu wa pili utakuwa unahakikishia wenyewe na nchi nzima kuwa kutakuwa na chakula cha kutosha kwetu na kwa wale wengine, na maharagwe ni chakula ambayo kinakuwa kwa haraka ama kinatumia muda mdogo shambani, chini ya miezi 3 unaweza kuumevuna.
During the short rains maharagwe inafanya vizuri sana. Irish potatoes, sunflower na inasaidia kurekebisha mchanga. Kuna hata hapa sorghum finger millet mmeona. Na hii yote they are drought resistant crops kwa sababu tunajua saa zingine during the short rains mvua inaweza katika. Vitu kama sorghum finger millet, those are drought resistant crops. So there is a lot of opportunity for our farmers kupanda hiyo mimea.
Likewise, Julia Ngeyo, a poultry farmer, has called on the county government to address the problem of shortage of agricultural officers in the field in order to improve poultry farming as alternative farming.
Tunaomba serikali ambayo imechukua sasa mheshimiwa anatembea, His Excellency anatembea, hakikishe mashinani tumepata veterinary wa kutosha. Na tusikuwa na ghost workers, tunakuta kwa ofisi kuna veterinaries wengi tunaambiwa wameenda field, sisi tuko kwa field tujawaona.
However, a section of farmers believes beans and vegetables do well during the heavy rain season.
Ukipanda short season, unaweza vuna mapema ukapeleka hata marako kwa shule kama karo ya shule. That's the best one. Na pia chakula ya kulisha pia watoto nyumbani.
A large percentage of farmers in the region relies heavily on the maize crop alone, with Trans Nzoia County producing more than 6,090,000 kilo bags of maize annually. Boniface Barasa, TV47, Trans Nzoia County.
And to another unfortunate story, a 3-year-old child succumbed to death while 4 others continue receiving treatment in Matungu Sub-County Hospital, that is in Kakamega County, after they ate poisonous cassava, as Lucky Heriano tells us.
It is here in Ebsambe village, Matungu Sub-County in Kakamega County. A usually delicious meal in this region turned out to be sour to these 4. Here, a 3-year-old child died as 4 others are on medication after they ate a meal of cassava which is suspected to have been poisonous. Dolphin Shundu, mother to the deceased, narrates how her grandmother bought cassava intended to prepare meals for her grandchildren, only things to turn out differently.
Sema hiyo miogo walichimba wakakula, wakahara nyumba mzima. Sasa akaanza kusema how comes tena huyu mwanaume achimbe miogo aitie huyu mama miogo yenye watu wakulangi.
Watoto vile walikula miogo, kwanza brother yangu ndiye alitangulia akaonja. Akasikia hiyo miogo ni kali, akaachana nayo. Watoto nao vile ni wadoga wajui, hao waliendelea tu kukula. Lakini sasa vile nilifika hapa nikapata hiyo mama kaa kwa hapa, nikamuuliza, "Hii miogo yenye umechimbia mama yangu, kwani hamkujua hii miogo watu wao wakuli, hii miogo iko na sumu?" Akaniambia hata hiyo miogo bwanangu alienda akachimba, tukakula sisi wote pamoja na watoto. Tumbo ilituuma.
However, after the meal, the 4 started vomiting and diarrheaing, a situation which led to them being taken to Matungu Sub-County for treatment, where 1 was reported dead after some time. According to the health public officer in Matungu Sub-County, Kelvin Lumwaji, investigation have begun to determine what led to the death of the young ones. Reporting for TV47, I'm Lucky Heriano.
Well, that is quite unfortunate. Thank you, Lucky, for the update right there. And I will shift gears to a different story altogether. That is on the question of education, as parents continue to elicit mixed reactions on the CBC program, as transitioning of grade 6 students to junior secondary school keeps looming. The parents now say that the program has come with so much financial burden, and the country, or as the country continues to grapple with the high cost of living.
CBC parents have been urged to join hands with the government in a bid to ensure a smooth transition to junior secondary schools. According to Principal Secretary for the Implementation of Curriculum Reforms, Fatuma Chege, parents are part of the stakeholders and have a huge responsibility in ensuring that the program becomes a success.
Secondary education must be understood as secondary education. We've been hearing people saying, why doesn't this class remain in primary? It cannot, because the curriculum is designed for secondary school with the sciences as we know them, biology, chemistry and physics.
Chege has challenged parents to play their role emotionally and financially in helping their children embrace the changes, even as they continue undertaking the critical transition in their academic life. Chege at the same time noted that most children at that stage are transitioning into adolescence and as such require the moral support in enabling them cope with the psychological changes in their bodies.
Some of them, many classrooms. I witnessed one that had 10 classrooms and there are no children in there. So there was no need to build there. However, there were schools that had deficit and others that had just enough. So those classrooms were being built, first of all, in schools that had deficit.
However, the CBC curriculum has continued to elicit mixed reactions, with parents lauding and expressing disappointment in equal measure owing to the financial burden.
Anyway, kwa wazazi imetupatia challenge kwa sababu saa hii inatuvutia zaidi kwa watoto, tuwakaribie zaidi. Tulikuwa kama mfano mimi nilikuwa naona sina ukaribu na mtoto, lakini mambo mengi yamekuja ya kuwa ni concentrate na mtoto.
I agree. You know, the parents are not used to engaging with the children so much, and there've been a gap between the parents and the children. But with the CBC curriculum, parents are getting a chance of knowing what the children have, of knowing the emotions of their children.
Unatumwa vitu vingi hata unashangaa hivi navyo, hata niseme nini mimi. Sina la kusema, waturegeshe ile. Wacha Mheshimiwa Ruto venye kuko Kenya wacha achukue, tubadilishe hii hali, tunaumia.
It is estimated that about 1.26 million grade 6 pupils countrywide are scheduled to be admitted to junior secondary schools in January 2023. Joan Kimani, TV47.
All right, to politics now. Former Embu Senator Leni Kivuti has defended the Devolution Empowerment Party's move to join the Kenya Kwanza coalition, saying that it was informed by the fact that most of Embu residents really voted for Kenya Kwanza. Addressing the press that is at his Kianyumbora home, where he had hosted a Thanksgiving event for his campaign team, Kivuti said that the move was a collective agreement by the members.
Nenerwa kama basi iliamua itaingia Kenya Kwanza, hiyo ni mambo ya basi.
Joining Kenya Kwanza is not a story. It is real. It's true. And we have reason within BAS, Devolution Empowerment Party. We discussed this internally and we came to a consensus simply because the majority of our people, they actually elected His Excellency William Samuel Ruto. Kenya Kwanza is a partnership. It's not like we are selling the bus or we are dissolving the bus. We just join the coalition as a partner. That's all. If Embu gets development, it's better than my personal ego.
And Deputy President, that is the President-elect, Dr. William Ruto, has said that he will accept Supreme Court's verdict that will be delivered today. And as our very own Chichi Josephine now reports, Ruto, who spoke in Njoro, that is in Nakuru County, during a Thanksgiving church service, said that Kenyans will achieve equally what it is that they seek in terms of making sure that we respect the rule of law.
Accompanied by his deputy-elect Rigathi Gachagua, ANC leader Musalia Mudavadi, Nakuru Governor Susan Kihika, among others, President-elect William Ruto exuded confidence that the Supreme Court will uphold his victory.
That because we respect the law, we respect institutions that are set up by the law. That we will respect IEBC and its decisions because we are law-abiding, and we respect the law because we are a country based on the rule of law. And tomorrow, equally, we will respect the decision of the judiciary because we are a country based on the rule of law and respect for all the institutions. That is the only way we will remain democratic. That's the only way we will remain a constitutional country. And that is the only way the citizens of the Republic of Kenya will be equal.
Deputy President-elect Rigathi Gachagua lashing at Azimio leader Raila Odinga's faction for what he said was calling for demonstrations.
Sasa anasema watu waandamane. Wewe mzee kitendawili na Maida mkuwe pale mbele, muongoze maandamano hapo mbele. Hakuna mtu Kenya tena atakubali watoto ya wenyewe watumiwe vibaya. Na ndio hii uchaguzi hii imeonyesha ya kwamba mtoto ya mama yeyote anaweza kuwa rais wa Jamhuri ya Kenya. Si imeonekana? This election, what it has done is to encourage every Kenyan that working hard and praying to God, you can achieve your dream in your lifetime.
He reiterated that once in power, they shall reshuffle senior police officers and provincial administrators as well as ensure better economy for Kenyans.
Polisi nimeona hapa wamenisimamisha ati ulituahidi ndani ya siku 100 mtatuongeza mshahara. Sasa ati imebaki 71. Hapana. Nyinyi polisi yenda pole pole. Hamwezi kwanza kuhesabu kutoka tarehe 9. Mtahesabu tukiapishwa. Si ndio? Kwa sababu nyinyi polisi mtu amechelewesha nyinyi ni hii msaya makesi. Kama hangekuwa na makesi tungekuwa tumeapishwa tungeanza nini? Lakini sasa ameleta makesi.
ANC party leader Musalia Mudavadi urged Kenyans to maintain peace after the judgment, sentiments echoed by Nakuru Governor Susan Kihika, who exuded confidence of the region remaining united.
We as a government want to be peaceful, we want to unite everybody, and we are committed to work diligently under the leadership of William Samoei Ruto so that we can achieve what we pledged in our manifesto.
I respect you so much because the kind of vitriol, the kind of hatred that was being spewed in this area, lakini mulisimama kidete na mukasema nyinyi kama wa Kenya munataka amani na mukakataa kuuziwa uoga.
The 7-judge Supreme Court bench is set to make its judgment on the legitimacy of DP Ruto's election as president after Azimio leader Raila Odinga filed a petition against his win.
Mimi nataka niombe wa Kenya wote tukigoja mahakama kuu kesho uamuzi wa mahakama yetu. I want to request all of us that we remain peaceful. Kenya is very important. Kenya is more important than any other leader.
Chichi Josephine, TV 47.
And still on matters politics, the Azimio la Umoja flag bearer Raila Odinga has maintained that the Azimio coalition is strong and the recently witnessed defections should not cause any form of alarm, adding that for a very long time such defections have been common in the world of politics. And Raila, while meeting a section of leaders, that is of the Kiraito Murungi-led Devolution Empowerment Team or party, well, the party leadership that recently defected to the Kenya Kwanza exuded confidence that he still commands a large following in this very county. Moge William reports.
Seen as a blow to the Azimio la Umoja coalition after Devolution Empowerment Party leaders led a section of its members and declared its support to the president-elect led coalition Kenya Kwanza, Raila Odinga has stated such moves are not new to him. Odinga also added that he will not be deterred by such moves even as more defections rogue the coalition.
This is the character being exhibited by our friend, and it is most unfortunate, but it is something that is historical. We as Azimio are confident that our cause is just, and if you're fighting for a just cause, you never get deterred by setbacks. Setbacks are part of the game.
Meru leaders led by Agriculture Cabinet Secretary Peter Munya, who attended the meeting, blasted the former Meru governor for defecting to their main rival camp despite having a pre-election agreement with the Azimio coalition.
The defection of the former governor of Meru is just a confirmation of what we have always known, that his sympathies lay elsewhere. And therefore, it is better to have strong people who are committed to you than have saboteurs.
Other leaders present reiterated to Odinga that the support he enjoys from Meru County and the larger Mount Kenya region is still intact and that he should not be deterred by the recent defections rocking Azimio.
Azimio is intact in Meru, and I know it's intact in Mount Kenya and in the entire country.
Raila Odinga, however, called his supporters to remain calm ahead of the much-anticipated ruling from the Supreme Court in a petition he filed wanting the court to overturn William Ruto's victory.
We believe that ultimately justice shall triumph and that it is the Kenyan people who will be the happier.
The Azimio la Umoja presidential flag bearer Raila Odinga has called on his supporters and Kenyans at large to exercise and also maintain peace ahead of the verdict by the Supreme Court of Kenya led by Martha Koome. Moge William, TV 47, Nairobi.
And as the country waits for the Supreme Court verdict by the 7-judge bench today, Kenyans have been asked to accept the court ruling instead of wasting time discussing about the same. This is according to Joseph Galgalo, the Assistant Bishop of the Holy Ghost Cathedral, that is a church right here in Nairobi, as produced by Andre Juma.
At the Holy Ghost Cathedral Church in Nairobi,
The Sunday service is conducted in a special way as a way of praying for the nation ahead of the Supreme Court judgment on Monday. Speaking to the press shortly after the service, Bishop Joseph Galgalo asked political leaders not to incite their supporters in case the ruling does not go their way.
Watu wetu wamechoka na siasa duni ya kupigana, ya uhasama, na wamekubaliana wengi ya kuwa ikiwa ni kuchaguana tena wako tayari. Ikiwa koti itaamua itakuwa fulani, wataikubali.
Wakenya ni watulivu mpaka watakapochochewa. Na mimi nasema hivi kibinafsi, kama maandamano yanafanywa wiki hii yana nia mbaya, na kwa ajili hiyo sisi kanisa tunakataa.
Jambo ambalo tunataka tu kuhimiza Wakenya ni ya kwamba waweze kuwa na amani, kwa sababu nchi hii ni yetu. Tulikuwa tukiwahubiria, tukiwaimbia amani. Amani ndio inahitajika kwa Wakenya wote.
Kenyans who spoke to TV47 expressed their satisfaction with the 7-judge bench, saying the Martha Koome-led team will give them justice as they desire.
We expect the positive result because we saw what happened. We even had the massive rigging which took place, and we hope very sincerely that the judges will give independent judgment without taking side.
If the judgment does go their way, they should remain peaceful and calm so that we continue with our lives.
Even now, if it goes either way, you know there are some people who will say, now that these people fought us in court, they should not benefit from the fruit that we have fought for. You see, you'll see some areas are going to be neglected, which is obvious. Okay, so that is a culture that if things can happen the way people want, nobody will fight for the presidency. You see, this is why you can see what you are seeing that were coming out in the courts.
However, Bishop Galgalo asked the Martha Koome-led team to settle on a decision that will not cause unusually high temperatures in the country, but instead come up with a good decision for prosperity.
Na kesi imeweza kukamilika kwa njia ambayo kila Mkenya ameridhika. Sasa tunawacha uamuzi uweze kutolewa hapo kesho. Jambo ambalo tunataka tu kuhimiza Wakenya ni ya kwamba waweze kuwa na amani.
Uamuzi wowote tutakaopata Jumatatu, sisi kama wananchi wazalendo wa Bungoma tunaahidi kuweka amani na kulinda kaunti yetu na kulinda nchi yetu.
Kenyans have however been asked to remain at home, follow the live proceedings at the comfort of their homes and not to crowd in the Nairobi CBD waiting for the verdict.
Ninataka kuwaomba Wakenya wasiende barabarani, waende kazini kwao. Hakuna kipato tutapata barabarani. Na barabarani ndio nafasi ya hooliganism, ya looting, ya violence. Na kama tunajua mahali watu waliuawa ni barabarani kwenye maandamano.
The long-awaited Supreme Court verdict is expected to change the political scene, meaning if Ruto's win will be upheld by the Apex Court, Ruto's swearing-in ceremony will happen on the 13th of this month in Kasarani Stadium, while Odinga's dream to become the 5th president will have been dealt another blow. Joash Onsare, TV47, Nairobi.
And today, the Supreme Court of Kenya is set to make the final verdict on the presidential petition, while Kenyans are nervously waiting for the judgment to find out who the next president then will be. Well, and as Micah Gungo reports, among the things that the questions that are to be considered by the Supreme Court is whether or not then the Elections Commission's portal was hacked into. Micah Gungo with that.
The Supreme Court on Friday concluded its hearing of the presidential election petition, with the 7-judge bench retreating to write their verdict that will be rendered on Monday. Following the conclusion of the legal showdown, all eyes are now fixed on the judges to administer their judgment, which will give the way forward for the country.
President-elect to come forward and receive his certificate.
The Deputy President William Ruto was declared winner after clinching victory by less than 2 percentage points against his opponent Raila Odinga, who is now challenging the result. The Supreme Court said it had identified 9 issues to determine the outcome of the petitions, challenging the results of the August 9th presidential election, including whether or not any irregularities were substantial enough to nullify the poll. The 9 key issues for determination included results transmission, uploading of Forms 34A, similarities of forms, postponement of Mombasa and Kakamega elections, tallying of votes and references with other elective positions, tallying, verification and declaration process, 50% plus 1 threshold, illegalities in the process and technology. But unlike some previous elections, the situation has remained peaceful. Siaya Governor James Orengo has exuded confidence that the Supreme Court will rule in favor of the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya presidential candidate Raila Odinga and confirmed that the just concluded general elections were bungled.
Mimi sina shaka hata kidogo ya kwamba maamuzi ya kesho itakuwa ya kwamba Raila Amolo Odinga alifanyiwa maajabu kupitia ujanja na ukora ya hawa mercenaries ambao walitoka nchi ya Venezuela.
Orengo, who is Raila's lead counsel in the petition challenging the declaration of the Deputy President William Ruto as the president-elect at the same time, called on Kenyans to maintain peace as they wait for the outcome and even after the court delivers its judgment.
Uamuzi ya mahakama itakuwa kwamba hiyo uchaguzi ilikuwa uchaguzi ambao ulikuwa na uwizi na mengine ambapo inaonekana Kenya hii hatukupata uhuru kamili. Kama mtu kama Chebukati anaweza kuleta watu kutoka Venezuela.
Sisi kama viongozi ningependa kuomba tuwe na subira na uamuzi wote ambao utatoka hapo kesho kwa mahakama ya juu. Sisi kama viongozi wa Azimio tuko tayari kukubali uamuzi wa mahakama ya juu, kwa sababu lazima tuwe na amani, and where there is peace there is development.
Odinga, who lost his 5th bid for the presidency, rejected the outcome of the August 9th polls and filed a petition at the top court alleging fraud in the vote tallying process. Among the questions being considered by the court is whether or not the Election Commission portal was hacked and if there was any interference with the transmission of the results forms. The court says it is attempting to answer 9 questions, and if the results is nullified, it could lead to fresh elections.
Okay, so you move it to the next table.
The top court also ruled that the votes cast in at least 14 out of more than 46,000 polling stations be inspected, scrutinized, and recounted. No election in the past 20 years has gone unchallenged, and both Odinga and Ruto have put together huge legal teams to argue their points. Regardless of the outcome on Monday, the judges may have 4 possible orders to make. The Apex Court may dismiss the petition by Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Coalition Party Chief Raila Odinga, thereby upholding the victory of President-elect William Ruto. In another possible outcome, the court may invalidate the declaration of Ruto by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission IEBC as the president-elect, which will set the stage for the nullification of the August elections. Regarding a situation where Odinga's petition is thrown out and Ruto's victory upheld, the court will direct on the party which caters for the cost of the petition. The decision of the 7-judge bench shall be final. If Ruto's victory will be upheld, then he will be sworn in on September 13 2022, 7 days after the delivery of the verdict. Should they allow the petition, Ruto's declaration as president-elect will be nullified and a repeat State House race conducted within 60 days? Mike, GOtv 47, Nairobi.
All right, thank you so much, Mike Kagungo, for that story. That also forms the basis of our conversation this morning. Make sure that you keep it TV47's Morning Cafe. We have so much lined up for you, including that conversation on the Supreme Court. Most importantly, also looking forward to get to understand some more on what to expect on the 13th Parliament, as well as taking a look at the question of security and where Kenya then is positioned at this hour of an electioneering period and what it would mean for the global fraternity, how we make sure that we keep our house in order, that moving forward then we're able to integrate as expected. And these are the key facts that we'll be looking at as to this question of what it is that is expected for the Supreme Court to address. A couple of things that we need to understand, just how heavy then it would be on the question of nullification if the Supreme Court decides so or otherwise. Then of course we all understand that based on what has been found is that there were some tenets of irregularities that were captured on this very process, and so we'll be keenly following to see what it is that the Supreme Court then will make in form of a verdict. But just to keep you up to tabs, you might need to understand that there are some quarters where then you cannot go to this very morning, as of course declared by the Nairobi Traffic Police Commander, that is Vitalis Otieno. And of course there are several roads to the Supreme Court that will be closed this Monday ahead of the court's judgment on the presidential petition. Some of these spaces are Kenyatta Avenue and the Cathedral Road that will be closed to the public. No motorist will be allowed to access the CBD, that is through Kenyatta Avenue via Cathedral Road, but instead they are advised to use Haile Selassie Avenue as well. Cathedral Road, Milimani Ngong Road will be closed at Kenyatta Avenue Valley Road Junction, that is near the NSSF building. Only vehicles heading to the court then will be allowed to access this. All other vehicles should use Valley Road, and a stretch between the Cathedral Road and Haile Selassie Avenue Junction will also be closed, and motorists have been advised to use Haile Selassie Ngong Road as the alternative route. We'll be keeping you up to tabs as to this to make sure that the country is well secured, and more so on the question of security, that we've been told by the Ministry of Interior that all is set to make sure that security is upheld. In a bit, I'll be introducing the guest this morning. We'll be having Honorable Farah Malim joining us, as well as Dr. Barak Muluka, Wakili Isaac Aluo Chair, and Professor Masharia Monene. I'll be introducing them in a bit, so make sure that you keep it right here. Remember, the hashtag is Morning Cafe at Linda_Alela, TV47KE across all our social media platforms. We're sampling some of your comments as we continue with the broadcast. As of now, allow us to take a quick short break as we then get to introduce the gentlemen.
Despite being visually impaired, he is a jack of all trades. It is our quest to find answers on how to take care of children with special needs and those with disability. You do not need to see musical notes to understand music, but rather to have your soul feel the vibe.
Actually, for us to make a wheelchair, we have to take measurements of the user.
After doing my assessment, I get to know the parent, I get to know the heaviness she's carrying.
Disability comes at different stages of life.
How well do you know what's happening around you?
Morning Cafe with heated political debates. Baraza la siasa.
Hiyo kitu azungumzie, angalie hali ya maisha ya watu.
Informative health discussions. Business, farming. Tasty Wednesday, Fitness Thursday, and Feel Good Friday with amazing DJs, celebs,
waimbaji, kuna comedians, alafu kuna wajinga,
and music bands every Monday to Friday from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. The next set of millionaires are farmers. As we know, agriculture has been and still is the backbone of our economy. As we traverse the different counties to meet different farmers, we ensure to get the story of how they started farming and even how they continue to penetrate the market and overcome the challenges.
Hapa, the reason why nilieka goose na si ducks. Goose, they are very easy to maintain.
A lot of farmers keep on calling, inquiring whether you're supposed to raise some seeds in the nursery or you're supposed to do them directly in the field.
The greenhouse helps us control the temperature because the temperature needs to be between 28 to 32 degrees.
Walk this journey with us every Sunday at 6:30 p.m. It's no secret, construction ain't cheap. But how do we make it affordable? Different individuals are finding ways of cutting down cost by use of pre-stressed slabs other than reinforced concrete.
Slate. Despite being visually impaired, he is a jack of all trades. It is our quest to find answers on how to take care of children with special needs and those with disability. You do not need to see musical notes to understand music, but rather to have your soul feel the vibe.
Actually, for us to make a wheelchair, we have to take measurements of the user.
After doing my assessment, I get to know the parent, I get to know the heaviness she's carrying.
Disability comes at different stages of life.
Despite being visually impaired, he is a jack of all trades. It is our quest to find answers on how to take care of children with special needs and those with disability. You do not need to see musical notes to understand music, but rather to have your soul feel the vibe.
Actually, for us to make a wheelchair, we have to take measurements of the user.
After doing my assessment, I get to know the parent, I get to know the heaviness she's carrying.
Disability comes at different stages of life.
How well do you know what's happening around you? Morning Cafe with heated political debates. Baraza la siasa.
Hiyo kitu azungumzie, angalie hali ya maisha ya watu.
Informative health discussions. Business, farming. Tasty things stylish. Here's to introduce.
Despite being visually impaired, he is a jack of all trades. It is our quest to find answers on how to take care of children with special needs and those with disability. You do not need to see musical notes to understand music, but rather to have your soul feel the vibe.
Actually, for us to make a wheelchair, we have to take measurements of the user.
After doing my assessment, I get to know the parent, I get to know the heaviness she's carrying.
Disability comes at different stages of life.
How well do you know what's happening around you? Morning Cafe with heated political debates. Baraza La.
The other gentlemen are still on their way, and I hope they make it here and on time for that matter. We are on this session up until about 9 a.m. as we cross over to the Supreme Court, and Kenyans are waiting. I can almost imagine that you are waiting as much, Daktari.
Yes, it's a monumental day, of course, when they are going to be what I've called Supreme Tiers. The Supreme
Tiers, okay, yes.
Yes.
Without doubt.
Supreme Tiers, or if you want, call them Prime Tiers. But they are going to be tiers. And the contradictions of life are such that for the same reasons, you find some people celebrating, others will be crying. And I think that is what the country is waiting for. And when you look at the voting population, you can also conclude that half of the voters, more or less, because when you talk about 48 point something and 50.49, you are talking about an almost equal split, and therefore almost half of the voting nation will be in tears and another half will be in celebration. And I even want to believe that those who did not vote must quietly, in the majority of cases, be also having their own preferred choice of outcome, and therefore they can also be subsumed into the prime tears and the prime laughter. It's the day of prime tears and prime laughter.
And amidst this anxiety, you realize that security has been heightened across the different parts of the country. Really, Wakili, is it that necessary for us to get to such moments, or we are the ones who are just over-projecting this?
It depends on how different actors react to the announcement. For example, when the announcement was made on the 15th of August, we had some small pockets in the country flaring up. For example, speaking about Migori, we found some young people going to the roads and burning up tires on the roads and things like that. Now, it didn't last for more than a day, but it was there. Now, it's because of those kind of issues that I think the security authorities are not taking any chances, and therefore sending the troops wherever it is they feel something could flare up. So fine, at least, but what we've seen is that they've sent troops to both sides. If they send troops to Wasingishu and they send troops to Kisumu, it means even they are not really sure what's going to happen. And so we just pray and hope for the best. Yeah.
And it's not always that you'll find the European countries, say the USA, decide to give travel advisories to their citizens. In most cases, there's some level of intelligence that perhaps hits their offices, and then they decide to make this. And such has been seen. Pretty much of exaggerating this, or it is necessary that we are cautious?
I think some level of caution is important. Although I must take it with a pinch of salt, because as an African, I have always felt slighted whenever these friends of ours begin sending out those kinds of advisories. Supposing we were to send out advisories telling Kenyans, please stay out of Washington, D.C. On the 6th of January, because things are likely to happen there. It's likely to be unsafe. We have seen protests in the streets of London, in the streets of Paris, in Rome, and in other places. So there is something also a little condescending about some of these advisories, regardless that there is indeed a need for us to check ourselves and our behavior around that are essentially supposed to be democratic, and therefore interrogate our own attitude in the context of democratic competitions that we freely elect to participate in. We should go there intending to win, but also acknowledging that someone will win and someone else will lose. It is what I've usually referred to sometimes as frontline soldier mentality. You know, when you are on the front line in the military and there is action, you always know that someone is going to be shot and someone is going to be killed. But you always know it will not be me. It is the next guy. We must get there knowing that it could actually be me.
Right. Let's talk about security for a moment, perhaps on a different angle. I do not know whether this, you have managed to see this video that was making rounds as to a man who breached security to deliver President-elect William Ruto some message. Yes, and it was a file, yeah? Perhaps, you know, just trying to say that I'm here, these are my qualifications, and I'd love to get a job. And, you know, the Deputy President then takes this very file and opens it and starts, you know, going through it. Do you suppose he should be opening such a file and before it is verified that it is safe? Because then again, we're looking at scenarios where the possibilities that, of course, could be pathogens that are not that are harmful in this very case, and we all understand the talk of anthrax and all that. At this very hour, should we lazily look at, you know, the Deputy President doing that? Is there something that needs to be done more on the question of the security detail?
I'll suggest that his advisors, his security advisors, will advise him not to repeat what he did. Because in this day and age, I mean, anything goes, just like you've correctly stated. And therefore, I mean, normal standard procedure should be one of his aides verifies, vets whatever comes through to him, and only when pronounced safe, then he can proceed and open whatever he needs to open. But on the other hand, he's a typical Kenyan politician. He's just been campaigning, mixing up with the people, and when they mix with the people, anything can happen. So sometimes there is an element of trust that you have with your people. When you're mixing with them, nothing much will happen. But on the other hand, that is just the opportunity that your enemies are looking for, lacks in security, and they can take advantage. He's no longer ordinary deputy president. He's now president-elect, and maybe next week he might even be president. And therefore, we can't take such chances.
And you know, Dr. Barak, at this time when we're talking about others who will have premium tiers, that we cannot even know where the Supreme Court judges retreated to you know, just go through these hearings and all these papers and affidavits and petitions that were submitted to them for purposes of security. They will just, well, voila, show up, and they'll be here to give us the ruling. Deputy President William Ruto, in this space, forget about today. It might not have happened in the country, but we all are privy to these cases of Bacillus anthracis and all this. Why is it that the Deputy President, his security detail, would allow for him to lazily just take such a file and go through it as if, well, he's a typical man of the people?
Yes, first, once you become president-elect, like Isaac says, you are a new person. You are no ordinary Kenyan citizen. In fact, the security around you is a new kind of affair altogether. It will be remembered that in 2002, after Mike Kibaki became the president-elect, the people who had been hobnobbing with him all over the place attempted to reach him at his residence in Muthaiga, and they were turned away at the gate. There are people who had been campaigning with him, who are in a collegiate kind of arrangement with him. And therefore, my short answer, short and brisk, is that if the file reaches the president-elect, then he must open it. He must do what he did yesterday. Because that file ought never to get to him.
That level, yeah.
There must be a security arrangement around him, and that security arrangement around him is not just decided by himself, by maybe having his cronies and homeboys and other people who have been with him. He becomes the property of the state, the property of the nation. And therefore the national security apparatus must put in place the essential arrangements for that. It doesn't matter that he has had a bad fallout with the outgoing president, that maybe the outgoing president is not happy, that he's the one who looks like he's set to take over. This is where country, nation becomes bigger than individuals and their preferences. So if it reaches him, let him open it.
Okay. Well, just perhaps for purposes of the people who are watching and for us to understand some more, and especially at this point where we are at the legal battle stage, we understand that the Constitution dictates that, every presidential contender should be protected, and therefore we need them alive as we proceed to the vote. At this stage, just how crucial and important is it for us to have Right Honorable Raila Odinga safe, Deputy President William Ruto safe, Wajackoyah Luchiri, George, as well as David Mwaure?
At this stage, I mean, the entire process isn't quite over. Fine, we have a president-elect, and therefore the biggest security should be around the president-elect and the deputy president-elect. But because the issue is not yet over, the decision could still be overturned. It means all the four main players still need the protection and the security, because if any one of them disappears out of the scene, again, we begin the process all over again. So to avoid the possibility of a lot of wastage, not talking about the personal loss aspect of it, it is important that they be properly secured until the entire process is complete. And even then, probably they must still need some overall security. I mean, don't just remove it from the day one becomes sworn in as president, but probably they need to taper off the level of security until things get back to normal.
It appears as though it's business as usual for Wajackoyah.
It shouldn't be. It's a serious lapse in security. What Isaac is saying is true. The process is not over. It is not done until it is done. And it will be done the moment the Supreme Court pronounces itself. That is if the Supreme Court upholds the election of Dr. William Ruto. If it doesn't, it is still not over. We go back for a period of not more than 60 days, but beyond that, there might still be another petition within the courts, and there could even be another repeat election ad nauseum until the day that the Supreme Court says, okay, this is it.
And the interesting bit is that they say nowadays it is the people to go out there and vote, and then, of course, then the Supreme Court will be coming in to decide. And so that's what we'll be discussing this morning. Perhaps not to focus much on what the ruling will be, but importantly, just, hover around it and get to understand some nitty-gritty details. Well, compare what it is that is happening now, to what has happened, in the previous times, as well as just envision, try to look at what the future then would look like in terms of making sure that we have it right politically, as many would look at this as a democratic gain. Others then say enough is enough, that Kenyans are tired. Theirs is a wish to make sure that we make the necessary adjustments to have Kenyans going back to business. But just how possible is this? Must be a tough time for the Supreme Court judges. Well, the 7 judge bench, looking forward to see what then they will declare for purposes of Kenyans to get to know what way forward. Is it going to nullify the declaration by Wafula Chebukati as the boss of the IEBC and, pronouncing Deputy President William Ruto as the president-elect? Or is it going to be otherwise? We take a quick short break and then we come back, loop in Honorable Farah Malim, who's also on the other end for this and much more.
Despite being visually impaired, he is a jack of all trades. It is our quest to find answers on how to take care of children with special needs and those with disability. You do not need to see musical notes to understand music, but rather to have your soul feel the vibe.
Actually, for us to make a wheelchair, we have to take measurements of the user.
After doing my assessment, I get to know the parent, I get to know the heaviness she's carrying.
Disability comes at different stages of life.
How well do you know what's happening around you? Morning Cafe with heated political debates. Baraza la Siasa.
Hiyo kitu azungumzie, angalie hali ya maisha ya watu.
Informative health discussions. Business. Farming. Tasty Wednesday. Fitness Thursday. And Feel Good Friday. With amazing DJs, celebs.
Waimbaji, kuna comedians, alafu kuna wajinga.
And music bands. Every Monday to Friday from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. The next set of millionaires are farmers. As we know, agriculture has been and still is the backbone of our economy. As we traverse the different counties to meet different farmers, we ensure to get the story of how they started farming and even how they continue to penetrate the market and overcome the challenges.
Hapa, the reason why niliweka goose na si ducks. Goose, they are very easy to maintain.
A lot of farmers keep on calling, inquiring whether you're supposed to raise some seeds in the nursery or you're supposed to do them directly in the field.
The greenhouse helps us control the temperature because the temperature needs to be between 28 to 32 degrees.
Book this journey with us every Sunday at 6:30 p.m. It's no secret, construction ain't cheap. But how do we make it affordable? Different individuals are finding ways of cutting down cost by use of pre-stressed slabs other than reinforced concrete, recycling plastics to make pavers.
The brick is stronger, it's cheaper, and it's lighter.
And recycling wastewater in your household.
What happens to my waste from the washroom, the solid waste? All that can break down.
Those are just but a few. Every Tuesday at 7:30 p.m.
Member of Parliament-elect of Dadaab, Honorable Farah Maalim. Speaker, karibu sana.
Asante.
Looking forward to that beat.
Being called speaker again. All depends on you people.
I hope it comes to pass.
He served the purpose and served it right, you think?
You were tour of duty the last time. Yeah, he did.
And they've given you a clean bill of health, at least for the few people I've heard, mentioning something to do with this, and therefore there should be no reason why they should lock you out, right?
Thank you.
We're not here to lobby though, but we have to appreciate, and thank you so much for
Let's hope so.
time.
I've had a lot of from both sides of the divide.
I don't know whether I should say congratulations as well.
Thank you for coming back.
Yes.
I think this time they got tired of rigging me. In the past.
Well, such is the case.
This time, by the way, except the presidential election where we have our doubts, and it was a very unique one in everything. But the rest of the elections in the country were very, very fair.
The rest of the election.
I'm telling you. And even the presidential election, I put a lot of blame on our side of the divide. We did not have agents everywhere. So I think the tinkering was, of course, in a number of cases, I was told, I'm hearing about all this very, very interesting, suspense-filled thing, how somebody has been really messing us from his own apartment in Caracas, Venezuela.
Linda, we must celebrate the ability of that Venezuelan who can change that form that is in the public portal, change the one which has been given to the agents, and change the one which has been delivered physically to the National Tallying Center, and the one that has been posted on the door, so that they are all reading the same.
And the judges asked
that Venezuelan is more than a magic maker.
Give credit.
No. You see, Barack, just a second. Let me explain to you something. Haven't you heard all these people who've been doing it from their safe houses in Turkey, in some cases in Nigeria.
Yes.
And taking people's money in the States and hundreds of millions of dollars.
Including the money that is in your pocket.
Hundreds of millions of dollars they transfer from one account in the States to another account to another account. So with IT, anything is
yeah,
possible.
but this is beyond IT, because if we were to take that analogy, we must say that those Nigerians are able to take even the money that is in your mattress in the house.
No.
And the one, yeah, because we are talking
we're talking about, you see, that one you don't need to do all that brilliant work. But what basically, whoever Kamajo is called, what is his name? Jose.
Kamago.
What he has done has been done by the Russians to the American election. Has been done by...
It's actually finding its way on the papers this morning.
Yes, they've been done in many places. Even the first world has suffered big time on that.
Speaker, first, you know, I have a lot of respect for you over the years. I'd like you to explain to me and to the viewers how this Venezuelan is able to change what is in the public portal and at the same time to change it so that it's reading the same as what is on the door at the polling station in the primary school where you voted, and the one which is given to the agent who was in the primary school where you voted, and the one which is brought to the National Tallying Center, that having tampered with it in cyberspace, he has also caused all these things.
Dr. Barak,
to agree.
You want us to overlook.
No, we can't.
Speaker, are you that tech savvy?
I'm not
to explain that.
But I do understand. I do understand, of course.
This is the speaker.
The rudimentary aspects of how this thing is being done, and it's possible. It's possible. But the thing is, what my side of the divide is saying is that these things are intercepted. And there must have been collusion by certain presiding officers, certain returning officers, and the rest of it. And that basically is informed very much by the disparity in the votes cast for the different offices. If there is a disparity, a major disparity, which is materially, significant between what is cast for the president, what's cast for the governor, what's cast for the senator, and the other offices, then of course you do understand something fishy has happened.
Right.
There should not be any difference, and if it's there, it has to be very, very tiny. But when it runs into a couple of 100,000, the difference is between that. Then of course somebody must have done what he did, whatever he did there, and there's been you see, if you only add 30 or 40 votes in 16,000 polling stations, then streams, then that's not something so significant for it to raise eyebrows at that local level. But fairly significant when you bring all that together and it's tallied at the end of the day. One thing is everybody's going to accept. And by the way, I said it in here many times, and many people blame me for it. And I said, if we are not going to be with Azimio as Oka, with Kalonzo on board, then Ruto was going to pick this thing 10 o'clock in the morning.
All right.
Now, just imagine, with all the efforts we did ourselves, it was still a close fight. We believe that we won. But even then, it was a very close fight. You understand my point?
Yes.
But it's possible to do certain tinkering. If you only tinker with about 40, 50 votes in 16,000, that's already almost 1 million votes. You see what I mean?
Right.
And the materiality aspect comes into it. Is that significant enough? One, to achieve the 50 plus 1%.
Yeah.
Is it significant enough to give one person victory over the other? And in both cases, it is significant enough.
Before we delve deep into that, let's pick it up from where it is that you started. And Isaac, Speaker says that he blames his side for not having enough agents on ground. I belong to this school of thought that believes the vote should be protected, whether we have agents on board or not. And we are reminded that, again, we cannot treat the electorate, the voters, to that, because then it would mean they should always be there, making sure that they put faces to make sure that their vote is guarded. Is that the precedent we want to set?
Under the law, it is the responsibility of the IEBC to ensure everything is done in the manner it's supposed to be done. So when you impose an additional cost on candidates and their political parties to have agents, that really shouldn't be necessary. We're already spending over 40 billion in financing the electoral process. And therefore, IEBC should ensure that every vote counts, every vote is protected, and no candidate and no political party should actually have the burden of having to have agents. Now, the reality is that we don't trust ourselves based on our history. There are some people who do not respect the will of the electorate. They want to impose their own private will above and beyond that of the majority of the electorate in the particular electoral area. And because you have these people who refuse to accept the will of the electorate, we are forced to incur costs on the arena of trust deficit. And that is why now we are spending money on having agents. Really, if the thing was properly designed and if we were working as better, well, countries or jurisdictions where the trust deficit isn't as high as it is over here, our elections should be much cheaper than they are. So what I'm basically saying is that we need to slash the electoral budget. We need to put in systems whereby any interface whereby there's a possibility of somebody changing anything, we need to see how we can exclude that or minimize that such that we reduce the cost. For example, a place like the United Kingdom, we don't have ballot papers with all these high-powered security features. In fact, our ballot papers are almost like currency. It's like money with all the security features put into place, and it's extremely costly. In such countries, it's just a piece of paper, pencil, you cast your ballot, it's put in a box, and you go home. Nobody bothers about anything. But here, because of that trust deficit issue, that's why we're having our problems. So if IEBC can come up with systems whereby we remove any interface whereby somebody can play Mickey Mouse games, then we should be having a better electoral system, cheaper, and that is fit for purpose, and we won't have to worry about all these issues we're worrying about. We won't be having a lot of the debates we're having over the last week or so at the Supreme Court, because we'll have a system that works in the manner it's supposed to be working. So if you're to ask me, I'm calling for an overhaul of the way we vote, preferably have a digitalized system. If we can send money, and I'm sure money is probably more important than a vote, if we can send money via M-Pesa and everybody's happy with it, there's nothing stopping us from using that kind of a voting system, whereby we remove all those interfaces where people play the crazy games, and we have a system whereby the vote that a voter cast counts, and we even have a result within 1 hour, as we do in M-Pesa, which is instant.
Barak, as we come to this space of, yes, the vulnerabilities of technology, and I mean, that's the reason why Speaker then would argue that this could have been interfered with. We can't overlook that in this world of technology. But even before it gets to that, in some countries, it's a marble affair in terms of how they cast their vote and all that. Why is it that for us, it has to go to levels where someone, you know, some people or some candidates should guard their votes to such extent that, you know, if you do not have enough agents, or if your agents are not well privy to the system, then you're mocked and you're reminded that you slept on the job?
You know, first, Linda, from the known to the unknown. And the Speaker has ducked the question.
We're going to go back to that. That's why I said the vulnerability
Linda,
of technology.
Allow me
all right.
to think the way my mind
Proceed, Barak.
functions. The Speaker has ducked the question. In the alleged tinkering, he has not told me how, after the tinkerage, and which must be an event post the closure of the exercise, the notice on the door in a Shungula primary school where I voted is the same as the one which has been tinkered with in the public portal, is the same as the one which has been given to each one of the 4 agents. It is the same as the one which has been delivered to the National Tallying Center. I want to appreciate that. I'm not some kind of zombie who is just going to be told that, oh, there was a Venezuelan and they tinkered with the public portal and therefore the election was stolen. Please, I've gone beyond that kind of being a zombie. I must be told how this technology then varies, even that which somebody is with us. They are passing a window on their way to Nairobi. That form also changes to reflect what is in the server post this interception. But that said and done, it is embarrassing that a team which is led by none other than His Excellency the President should be telling us that they did not have agents. Yes, IEBC owes Kenyans a duty of care, as the lawyers would say, and I have 2 of them on my right here. Duty of care. Ours is a right which we must enjoy. That right must be protected by somebody who owes us that duty of care, and that is IEBC. But I'm just wondering, nonetheless, from a very practical human perspective, that here is a formation which, when you look at the schedule of the notables and grandees, you start with His Excellency the President at the very top, with the entire command base, with the entire intelligence and security networks, with the entire arsenal of funds, including those which are protected from being accounted for, with Kinoti, with Mutiambai, with, I don't know, Matiangi, with Dr. Karanja Kibicho.
Are these with Dr. Barak?
With all of them. And Karanja Kibicho was going around talking about how they were going to be voted. With even ICT, Musheru. Where was Musheru when people were intercepting things and putting them? And he's supposed to be the grand guru of all these things. So take us with a measure of intelligence also. At least some of us, not all of us are zombies.
Valid questions, though. Do you still believe that President Uhuru Kenyatta, yes, I'm coming to you, do you still believe that President Uhuru Kenyatta and that the state was for Right Honorable Raila Odinga?
Not that
to this level?
Still believe.
It was,
he gallivanted all over the place, moving from post to pillar and pillar to post, propagating.
You've been here long enough to know that as well. Politics then is a game of spin mastering. And sometimes you would look at someone as though they are on your side.
President Uhuru Kenyatta must then be an exceptionally gifted public performer in the theater arts.
Response to Barack Oluka.
This man majored in literature, I think, in his undergrad. So
give it to him.
He's a Shakespeare, and basically he has a way with the language. There's no problem with that. But let me explain to you something. I said it could only be done with the complicity of certain returning officers and presiding officers. In which case, you see, let me tell you one thing. In most of those polling stations, there were no, Azimio did not have a presidential agent. So our agents were focusing on the numbers for their own candidates. You see what I mean? The moment they are told, Haramalim in this stream 1 of Dada Primary School, this is what you got. My agent will write there down. My opponent. My opponents are there. The governor's people are there. The other opponents are there. So everybody will begin. When it comes to the presidential election, people had very little interest in that because except, and I noticed this, let me explain to you. Everywhere we went, my people told me later on, there was a Ruto agent there.
Everywhere.
Every single stream, there was an agent for Ruto, was taking down the numbers for Ruto. Now, if you had certain returning officers and certain presiding officers collaborating on these things and basically being in complicity with these things in certain areas, because the areas right now focus is only central Kenya and Rift Valley, Kalenjin Rift Valley, then it's possible that whatever you are putting there on the form, even if when they're putting the forms on that, other people are only concentrating on the candidates that they had. They were not concentrating on the presidential elections. You get my point? Now, the presidential votes, when they counted, they were there. There was no agent from this side.
How different would it have been
just a moment.
There?
But then if there was that tinkering of 30, 40 votes in certain areas, and it's kind of a prearranged, and if there was a complicity of certain aspects of IEBC, then that's also expected in a way, let me tell you. I don't know it myself. I'll be very honest with you. This is one area where I go by the arguments by everybody. So it's possible then that the thing is end to end. You see, if there's end-to-end complicity in that, then it's possible. But there is no way without that end-to-end itself that somebody in Caracas would be able to influence all those things. He will only influence if he has the instructions, add 30 votes on that. There's going to be what you call congruency on that because the people on the ground are also adding. There was that understanding. You see, let me tell you, if it's a question of 50 votes or 60 votes or 30 votes, in a place, people hardly see that difference. Now, my question is only one. In the event it's there, if that disparity can be proven, that serious disparity in which there are so many votes for the presidential election candidates here.
And the burden of proof lies with the petitioner up until now.
Just a moment, just a moment. And then less votes for those cast for the other offices. And the question is, you remember in the last election, the election was largely determined by one question that was raised by a number of them. I think Justice Philomena first of all raised it, and then Smoking Wanjala got involved also. To clarify it further, you have 6 ballots you're given, and you intend just to vote for the president. What do you do with the other 5? You get my point? So there are 2 areas, in my opinion, that would always raise that eyebrow. If there's that disparity was significant enough, and that disparity itself is materially significant to the extent of changing, of influencing the results, then of course we have a big case.
Wakili, whichever way you look at it, there are high possibilities that the election was marred with irregularities, yeah? And so how heavy will a nullification be, and how heavy will it be for them to say that we uphold what it is that Chebukati declared and, mentioned Deputy President William Ruto as the president-elect?
That question kind of puts me into the role of a judge now. There's 7 of them today making that decision.
What do you look forward to?
No problem. I'll give my view. I don't know what their views will be, but I'll give my view. I'll start from where Barak has just, his questions have highlighted. When I woke up on the 9th, I went to the polling station. I was verified electronically, so the Kimskit counted that I passed through the system. I was given a papers, 6 of them. I cast my votes in all the 6 different electoral seats. It was put in a box. That was counted manually. It was recorded manually on Form 34 and other forms for the other positions. And it was then disseminated and everything else. What Barak is basically saying is that on the verification process, you cannot have consistency in the scanned copies in the portal and with all the other copies, carbonated copies that are given to the agents, that are given to the returning officer and taken to bombers, etc. So if there was no proof that there was some alterations in all the different documents by all the different players, then we are basically left with the option of accepting the results as were declared by the IEBC. Because all these were verified. The reason why it took 6 days as opposed to having a result announced after 1 day was the physical forms had to travel from wherever they are, all the 46,229 polling stations, and find their way to bombers. And they were verified. And once they were verified, then some results were announced. So if we rely on those physical copies, then the results should not be any different to what was declared. And at the end of the day, the reason why we're having an election is to find out whether did anybody get 25% in the majority of the counties, and did somebody get at least 50% plus 1 vote? If that is the case, then Ruto will be, his election will be affirmed. Now, there could be other things by the ways, whether somebody could tamper with the portal. The portal is not the physical vote. The portal is an image. It's a derivative. It is not the primary document. So in cases where the primary document was challenged, there was some scrutiny taking place at Forodha House. There was no material difference. In those areas where Azimio thought there was some hanky-panky going on, there was no material difference. The figures are pretty much what was announced. And therefore, it would appear, if you're going by the primary document, I have not yet seen proof that would sway me to overturn the results that were announced. I've not yet seen proof. So if you're talking about, did this computer system do this or do that, those are derivatives, those are not the primary issue. On the primary issue, from what I've seen so far, that result holds. And if that result is upheld by the Supreme Court, then Dr. Ruto is going to be basically confirmed as a president, essentially. Yes. So I'm waiting to find out what reasons, because I didn't sit in the arguments last week. I was seeing a lot of histrionics, a lot of entertainment and everything else. But on the fundamental voting process, counting the physical votes and everything else, there was very little to overturn that. And since there's very little to overturn that, as a judge, I'll simply say, this is why the people went to vote. They wanted a result. This is what the result says. And therefore, the other issues that are not perfect, we'll see how to ensure IBC improves on those other issues.
And I'm glad you mentioned IBC because it's at the heart of this.
You know, it's everything is, the numbers are razor thin. When the numbers are razor thin, then of course it's an issue. You see what I mean? And any this thing could be decided in any direction. I am of the opinion that it will largely be decided in overturning that what you call the declaration of Chebukati. But then we're still not out of the woods. You know, the moment that happens, again, it comes to beg. The question that comes to beg is if the indictment is going to be found on the conduct of Chebukati himself and the IEBC, then who's going to conduct the rerun? You see what I mean? And if that again becomes an issue, then we have a constitutional crisis because there's a lacuna in our constitution. We have never envisaged and imagined that possibility when we're doing these things, when we're putting that constitution together. But in the event that happens again, how do you move on from there? Okay, you know, the doctrine of necessity comes in always. We look at what the country has to move forward. So it's one thing I can tell you, for the legal minds, for the political environment, what is being argued out right now, I can safely say has never been argued out in any other country in the world. So in a sense, we have to be very proud of two things. One, the manner in which we're trying to conduct and manage our own electoral process and our judiciary. You know, we're both now leaders in a manner that, you know, you will, jurists will talk about this for a very long time to come. And we'll use this as case studies. Yes. So, and then, like I said myself, if we're able to resolve this one now, one way or the other, we'll never look back again, let me be honest with you. You get my point? Whichever way we resolve it, the problems that are there in IEBC, the problems that were there, we will find provisions in law. We're going to make the amendments in law to make sure that that does not happen again.
All right.
Because like I said some times back, we used to have one time the supervisor of elections. I don't know if you remember yourself. Montgomery was the supervisor of elections. There's only one man who used to run all the elections in the country here. But now we have, you know, basically a commission, a whole commission. The commission, you cannot say that there's one commissioner general and the rest of them are, you know, flower girls, basically. You know what I mean? That is there also. That lacuna is there.
Okay.
And even in the process where both the constitutional provision as well as the act, the operationalized an act, insist on the commission. There is a thin line between when they say in the commission, are they talking about the commissioners? Or they're talking about the body of the commission itself, or they're talking about the chief CEO of the commission and the rest of them, or they're talking about the commissioners, the law.
Speaker, allow us to loop in Barack on that very point, and seriously implicated on all these matters is the IEBC. Whether the Supreme Court then will uphold or nullify this election, then lots of matters then will come about as to the credibility, integrity, and the confidence that the people will have on the IEBC. Well, what do we envision for this very body that is considered independent in the Constitution and at the heart of running activities of the election? At least with the current Constitution, it stands all the way.
Linda, mine is not a legal mind. It's just an inquisitive, journalistic mind, an inquisitive, philosophical mind, even an inquisitive village mind, because I'm essentially a village boy. Now, in the village, the kids may go to the cooking pot in the fireplace, and they may start stealing the vegetables. I think the people of Emanyudia can understand this clearly, and other villages across the country. The fire steals sifwa from the pot.
Well, still cooking.
Maybe they have cooked and it's been kept at the back of the...
Forgive my ignorance. I come from a purely meat and milk background myself.
The pot is kept at the back of the fireplace. Yeah, and Mama has gone out to do other work. And she will come back to make food. Only when she goes to the pot, she finds that it's empty. And they say it is Isaac who was eating. But as they say it's Isaac who was eating, the suit is also on the other fellow's mouths and cheeks. They say, and this Ifiro, it is called Ifiro. Ifiro. This dark suit around your mouth.
How did you get it?
How about it? Or for the more urbanized, like yourselves, who have sugar at home, the kids may be licking the sugar. And when mama is asking who was licking the sugar, and you're saying, no, me, I was not there, it was Farah, but we can see it on your lips, we can see it on your cheeks. We can see it on the cheeks of my friend Justus Yangaya, who was robustly reading the results. We can see it. We can see the suit on the lips and the cheeks of Juliana Cherera, who was reading these things before us. And now when the critical moment comes, you say, I was not there when ende Congo la sienyene, as we say in the village, that I was not there. I removed myself from this lot. Look, this thing about the 4 commissioners and the dysfunctionality in IBC and so on, it's not just a fiction, it is fictive, the correct idiom. It is fictive that you have been there as part of this process up to the dying moments, and then you suddenly separate yourself from the process and you start to say that I did not know what I was reading. I said earlier on that I was not a zombie, and I don't want to believe that the apparatus that we have of choosing people to become commissioners would fail to vet them to the extent that they would give us 4 commissioners who would be given results and be told to go and read, and then they just go and read, who would be failing to question Chebukati gazetting himself as the national, as the presidential returning officer, and then at the 11th hour, we are saying that, oh, we were not involved.
So Chebukati in 2017 comes with this statement to the press and to the country that things are not in order in IEBC. And one of the judges recently asks Chebukati, if at all the house was not in order, would it not have been noble for you to as well acknowledge this, even at that point when you are declaring results, that commissioners so-and-so are not in agreement to this for this and this reason, but all the same we proceed to Nini. So does it not implicate Chebukati as well when we're talking about these ones that have sugar?
Absolutely not, because there is a way in which you officially distance yourself from these things. You cannot vacate the space where the drama is taking place, and this is official, sanctioned, legal drama. Then you migrate to another place. Your disagreement must be noted in writing, in meetings. I have had the privilege of sitting on boards in this country, including in such exclusive entities like the Council of the University of Nairobi, which, as we are all aware, is the foremost university in the region. And when you want to differ, you say, please note down my reservations. If no such reservations have been noted down, you cannot come before the world and declare to the world a non-existent the dissension which you are not able to provide minutes of, and say that minute number this has captured the dissension of Juliana Cherera. If we are here, for example, Linda, and you go and sit in your newsroom, and there is a controversial item which you don't agree with, you cannot leave your colleagues in the newsroom and then go to an anteroom and set up your camera. These days you have these things, which gadgets you move around with quickly. They were not there when I was a broadcaster. And you start saying, oh, the news which is just about to come from TV 47, I don't agree with it. The editor-in-chief has decided on this alone. You say it there that I don't agree with this. Not my reservations. I am the anchor. I'm going to read it, but I don't agree. Please put it in writing. So there was no dissension. You have got to come and prove there was dissension. In fact, you have got to prove that you are not a gun for hire, that you are not a mercenary, that you are not sent there on a specific mission, that this is a perpetuation of that mission by other designs and devices.
Chebukati is about to exit the stage. The nullification of 8 of that declaration by the Supreme Court. You want to say something?
Linda, yeah. You know, Linda, there are many things in this whole thing. There are many things, and some of them not looking so significant in the eyes and in the minds of many of the people who will comment on these things. Because of the very nature of the razor-thin difference between a victory and a runoff. Because of that, everything matters here. For example, there's a big issue. The Constitution says that 50 plus 1% of cast votes. Does those cast votes include spoiled votes? Now, if you add in the spoiled votes into this whole number, then something will change. You get my point? Yeah. Something is going to change. When you remove it, then of course it has a different notion. You understand my point? So because of the razor thin difference between the person declared as a victor and the person who was not declared a victor, or Ruto and Raila, in this case, we have to look at everything, however insignificant it looks, because those small things will then force a minimum of a runoff. Are you getting my point? In the very least, and as a rerun, you know what I mean, runoff, let's say, between the two guys. Okay. I was hearing you the other time talking about the escort and the security details for the presidential candidates. The only presidential candidates right now, the potential presidential candidates we have are Ruto and Raila and Ruto, and nobody else.
The other two?
The rest of it ceased. It's no longer there. You have to give them security because of the nature of, but then they are no longer in the, they've exited the stage. Okay. They've exited the stage. It's just the two top ones who are going to go for a runoff, if there's going to be a runoff. So the judges are going to look at many things. Very, very powerful details in there, which are might look small, but because of that razor-thin difference between the two in the declaration of Chebukati, you'll be surprised how things are going to turn out to be.
Isaac, Philomena Mwilu says, blame yourselves for giving us 14 days to deal with a matter that would require 1 year, in our opinion. I want us to unpack that statement after the short break.
Despite being visually impaired, he is a jack of all trades. It is our quest to find answers on how to take care of children with special needs and those with disability. You do not need to see musical notes to understand music, but rather to have your soul feel the vibe.
Actually, for us to make a wheelchair, we have to take measurements of the user.
After doing my assessment, I get to know the parent, I get to know the heaviness she's carrying.
Disability comes at different stages of life.
Well, do you know what's happening around you? Morning Cafe with heated political debates. Baraza la Siasa.
Hiyo kitu azungumzie, angalie hali ya maisha ya watu.
Informative health discussions. Business. Farming. Tasty Wednesday. Fitness Thursday, and Feel Good Friday with amazing DJs, celebs,
Waimbaji, kuna comedians, alafu kuna wajinga.
and music bands every Monday to Friday from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. The next set of millionaires are farmers. As we know, agriculture has been and still is the backbone of our economy. As we traverse the different counties to meet different farmers, we ensure to get the story of how they started farming and even how they continue to penetrate the market and overcome the challenges.
Hapa, the reason why niliweka goose na si ducks. Goose, they are very easy to maintain.
A lot of farmers keep on calling, inquiring whether you're supposed to raise some seeds in the nursery or you're supposed to do them directly in the field.
The greenhouse helps us control the temperature because the temperature needs to be between 28 to 32 degrees.
Walk this journey with us every Sunday at 6:30 p.m. It's no secret, construction ain't cheap. But how do we make it affordable? Different individuals are finding ways of cutting down cost by use of pre-stressed slabs other than reinforced concrete, recycling plastics to make pavers.
The brick is stronger, it's cheaper, and it's lighter.
And recycling wastewater in your household.
What happens to my waste from the washroom, the solid waste? All that can break down.
Those are just but a few. Every Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. we talk construction.
There's no alpha without an omega. There's no lead without any followers. No man is an island. We need each other. We need this conference.
We say it, we do it, we act
it.
Kama una mpenzi wako, kila siku kama wanavyosema, kila siku mwishi mapenzi.
We don't toe the line, we set the standard. We don't eat the grass, we lead the pack.
As an alpha male, you're also a leader. Not to just women, friends and family, but to everyone else you've never met before.
We are the beauty, the spice and the brains. The men's conference where men become alpha males.
And you can catch us every Wednesday at 10 p.m. This is The Grind. Only those who will risk going too far can possibly find out how far one can go. T.S. Eliot.
So I decided, let me just take this up, put the teaching on hold first. Let me try see where this can go.
I mean, the opportunities are a lot. But is that all you need?
The 13th Parliament, which is very, very important that we have this very discussion, and we are as well joined by Professor Macharia Munene, who is a political historian. Thank you so much, Professor, for finding time to be here. As well, we have the Member of Parliament-elect for the DAB, Honorable Fala Malim, as well as Wakili Isaac Alua Chair and Dr. Barak Muluka, Communications Strategist. Gentlemen, once again, we get to the conversation and to you before we loop in Professor Isaac, once again to that statement by Philomena Mwilu. And on several occasions I've asked here, is 14 days enough really to arbitrate, to look into this matter and come back to the people of Kenya, as Farah Malim would say, you know, make sure that you look into the nitty-gritty details and also listen to all these petitioners, respondents as they present their submissions. 14 days enough?
That question has been answered by the judiciary several times. They've been asking for at least 30 days, maybe even 60 days. That is looking at the thing from their perspective as judges. We had a different perspective last week from Okia Omtata, my friend, whereby he said 14 days is actually more than enough. Okay. Is, in other words, looking at it from a bigger, a holistic perspective. This is the president, the chief executive, the head of state of Kenya. We cannot be in a state whereby we have a vacuum ad infinitum, forever. We need to make a decision and move on as a country. Also, the fact that we only have 14 days means that we don't have the luxury of dealing with all the issues under the sun that could come up. 14 days focuses your mind to deal only with the key critical issues that matter in the election. And if you're dealing with the key critical issues, which is what we've been dealing with since 2013, 2017 and now, that time, in my opinion, I think is enough. And so in this particular case, if you're focusing only on the key issues, for example, the question that was raised by Barack earlier on, are paper records versus high-powered electronic records as a case in point. If you're dealing with key issues, I mean, that was a question we answered probably in the first day or second day. And the rest were just basically just waiting for the 14-day period to come up. So if you're dealing with critical issues, that 14-day period is adequate. But if you're trying to talk to be the headquarters, world-class capital of legal jurisprudence and everything else, and of course you want all the time in the world to come up with beautiful judgments that are going to be used to teach people in Harvard, Yale, and all that kind of places. Yes. So, but in Kenya, we're dealing with the real world. We have a country to run, and therefore 14 days is adequate, I think. It wasn't bad judgment by the framers of the Constitution to come up with that 14-day period. In non-critical positions, we have 6 months. Say governors, and in fact, all the other seats of 6 months, because they're not as critical. So I think, in my opinion, that time is adequate. Maybe the judges just need to up their game and look for the critical issues only and focus on those critical issues. The rest can come up in the course of time.
A couple of questions that the judges are supposed to answer. They present to us 9 matters to focus on. Just what would be critical and what would not be critical. When we say that the nitty-gritty details as well are very, very important to make a determination that really would appear worth. And as they would say, pray for us, because we want to bring back to Kenya what it is, or nothing less than what it is that Kenya expects for us to bring. What are the chances for the petitioners? What are the chances for the respondents? Professor?
I think there are 2 outcomes here. One, affirm Ruto. The other one, call for a runoff. Those are the only 2 things. I think the runoff will affect the first. If there is a runoff, then of course the other one is put aside. To have a runoff, the judges will have to be satisfied that Ruto did not get 50% plus 1. And now the issue here is not just the numbers, but the formula. We had during the presentations all sorts of things. Which formula do you use? Is it the valid votes, or the vote cast, or the register? So if they should be adventurous and say use the register, registered voters, then the winner will have to get 11 million, which automatically knocks everybody out. If it's a question of using the cast votes, whether it goes polls or messed up or whatever it was, it was cast. Therefore, count it. I think that the issue had been raised before in the previous petitions. And I think this question is whether the judges will go back and say, we already ruled on this, is the valid vote. Now, if it is valid votes, then the Ruto will be confirmed. And so we then have a swearing in 7 days or thereabout. So those are the main things that will come out. And there are 7 good Kenyans there who are judges, and they know Kenya, they know the issues. What are they going to decide?
When you say a runoff, you mean a runoff, nothing to do with a fresh election or a rerun. And therefore, this automatically places us in that very point. You agree?
Yes, in the event that, I think if they prove that Ruto did not get the 50% plus 1, for whatever reason, and one reason is also the definition of what's a valid vote. Is it a cast vote, or is it the one which basically is not spoiled? So when you say valid, in my opinion, it means every cast vote is a valid vote, whether it's spoiled or not.
Right.
Now, so there's a lot of determinations that are going to be made, and a lot of what you call interpretations for jurisprudential purposes that are going to be done here. And it's not easy. So either way, either because on the grounds that there were irregularities, or on the grounds that the threshold was not arrived at, there has to be a runoff or a rerun, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
You see what I mean?
Right.
And I think that is, the semantics are plenty. Like I told you from the beginning, if the difference was like 2 million votes or 3 million votes, then of course we would have a much easier way to deal with these things. But right now, because of that nature of very, very thin margin, everything counts.
Okay.
Now, the reason why I partly hold what you said, partly think it should be at least 3 weeks. Because if there has to be, we've changed the law, and we have accommodated the possibility of a recount. In the event of a recount, then you declare the winner the winner. And
as opposed to taking Kenyans
yes,
to another
yes,
process.
yes. So
okay?
if you have to do a recount for all the constituents in this country, and all of them have got to be brought here to the court, you need at least another week, at least one full additional week.
Right.
For those the Kims, and then you see there's a cross what you call verified. So when you say verifiable, verify the thing, it means you verify until you arrive at the truth. You arrive at the facts, without any ifs and buts and hows and whys. Yeah? Just say this is what was done. So if the courts have got that jurisdiction, the courts are not just there. What you have to understand is that in our own constitution, there are certain things we changed. And the 2010, what do you call, dispensation, which was we shall not sacrifice substantive justice on the altar of technicalities and procedures.
Right.
You get my point? You just can't say that, no, we have such a limited time period, there are certain things we can do, there are certain things we cannot do. No. That substantive justice
has to be
there.
All right.
The winner has to be the winner in this case. So in terms of verification, you verify right to you get the facts.
Okay. Let's loop in Barack on this. And Barack, for us to get the winner, it has to be Deputy President William Ruto, who's now the president-elect, or Right Honorable Raila Odinga. And of course, in respect to history and the fact that it repeats itself, there are general fears, runoff, rerun, and the fact that the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, as the main petitioner, has registered displeasure on how IBC has handled this on the persona of Chebukati. Chances then would be very high that he would decide to boycott, as it happened in 2017. What kind of game would it be for the people of Kenya, and what to expect if the courts were to take us to this direction? Do you suppose in their judgment then they put such matters to consideration?
First, before I talk about what it would mean to Kenyans, I must protest that I have now been pinned literally against the wall.
You should look at yourself on the screen. You don't look bad, actually.
And that Kenyans can see that Barack has now been pushed to the wall, literally.
Pretty close to the host, so you will get lots of favors there.
The significant chasm between him and the hostess. Regardless, let me address the fundamental question that you raise and what it would mean to the country. But prefacing that very critically with the understandings of what has been said before by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court in 2017, 2013 has defined a cast vote as an expression of preference. That there is the cast vote and there's the spoiled ballot. That the placing of that paper in the ballot box is not within that interpretation, at least as of now, what is intended by a cast vote. A cast vote is a clear expression of preference. And therefore, if the ballot is spoiled, it is separated from the rest. And what remain are then what are considered to be cast votes. the court, not Barak, the court, pronounced itself twice in succession on the matter. Any departure from that would amount to what is called shifting of goalposts. And shifting of goalposts, Farah Speaker, you remember when we were boys playing football, we would define some space. Sometimes we did not even have the sticks, Professor, to put there and say, this is the goalpost.
You imagine.
Sometimes we even took two boys, the ones who were not very good, and we told one stand here, and the other one stand here, and they became the goalposts. And sometimes when the ball is coming, you would tell one of the boys, asonge huku, so that the ball, which would otherwise have gone outside the goalposts, is now considered to be a score. We must remember that IBC and Chepkati are operating against a background of history, a history of elections and a history of determinations. They could not possibly go out and determine this matter outside previous decisions of the Supreme
Barak,
Court.
is that to say that court pronouncements and determinations then become law?
Of course.
Automatically?
That is one of
whether
the sources,
enshrined or not?
That is one of the sources of Professor, you were speaking, Speaker, and I was very
I will allow you. I will allow you a minute, perhaps to respond to that, so we don't use that line.
I just wanted to respond.
I was very quiet because in the academy.
You don't mind a response? Do you mind him responding to that question?
Okay, let him intercede.
In good faith, yes.
In law, the Supreme Court does not have to follow precedent.
Okay.
This is another lawyer. We're both lawyers, the two of us. So basically, the Supreme Court is the epitome of the development of that intellectual jurisprudential, mitigation.
Okay.
It was so if these judges, these particular judges, don't have to follow that. You get my point? So that's where the issue is.
Is that well answered?
As I was saying,
that's why they overturn. You find one.
We have to decide whether
proceed. Barak, proceed.
Whether it is Farah Mali.
Proceed,
the
Barak.
The viewers already are aware that I've been pinned.
It is Barak.
Yeah. Now the Supreme Court cannot be whimsical about its management of the law, of jurisprudence, and of public affairs and affairs of fundamental public concern. You cannot give the referee the whistle and the ball and the players, and then you come at the end of the game, you look at the match commissar's report, and you say, yeah, although we made that decision at that time, it was wrong, and therefore the outcome in this game should be as follows. Natural justice, fair play, requires that you are going to uphold this particular decision, and if you want, you can issue an obiter dictum and say that going forward, I think this should be revisited. But you can, otherwise the court becomes whimsical, and there becomes no basis for going to subject yourself to a whimsical environment, and hence the consideration of some of the things you are saying, that someone is going to boycott the election, and what does it mean to the country. Now, if somebody, anybody, William Ruto, Wajakoya, Mr. Raila Odinga, any one of these four boycotts repeat election, it doesn't matter. It is not inscribed anywhere or engraved anywhere in granite that so and so must acquiesce before there will be a repeat election. In 2017, some people stayed away. That did not stop the country from going to a repeat election and a president-elect being declared, and that president being sworn in. And in spite of the fact that some people then went on to attempt to do mock swearing in, that did not get them anywhere. And so finally, therefore, as Professor Macharia Munene says, there are going to be only two possibilities today. And you can write those down in your diary and take them to the bank. One is that the election may be upheld. The other one is that the election may be nullified. There was a third prayer which was made by Azimio that Raila Odinga be declared the winner. Now that is completely off the cards. It's off the cards because you cannot be the mouth that eats itself up and expects to continue speaking and eating other things. This mouth condemned the election as fatally flawed, beyond redemption. So for the Supreme Court to declare anybody validly elected, it must first redeem this irredeemably flawed election. And if it redeems it, then it must find that it was properly conducted, and therefore Dr. William Ruto is validly elected. But if it finds that it is beyond redemption, it must call for fresh elections.
Beyond redemption, Isaac, then it would mean that we are going for a fresh election under a new IEBC, because then beyond redemption, it means it implicates the position of the IEBC.
Impossible even before he speaks. Absolutely impossible.
Impossible. But then again, we have to look at some of these things because the space that we are in, we perhaps never envisioned, right?
Well, the issue here is the court asked some pertinent questions, including to that very issue you've raised. The Supreme Court has no power to grant some of the prayers that are being asked. Grant a Chapter 6 finding against IEBC or Chebukati or things like that. Remove the 3 commissioners who stood on one side and have a fresh election with led by Cherera and the like. That is not in the ambit of the Supreme Court. Their role is very clear in Article 140. They either uphold or nullify the declaration of the president-elect. And that is basically it. They don't have the leeway to go into any other areas. So if somebody decides we're not going to, we nullify this election, we suppose have a fresh election as one of the possible outcomes, and then somebody will say, if you're having a fresh election, Chebukati and his team cannot be there, I would prefer Cherera and his team. Why? Somebody asks, are they partisan or are they independent? And mind you, it's supposed to be an independent electoral boundaries commission. So, and there are issues on Article 248 to 251 that deals with removal of commissioners from constitutional commissions. Now those processes have to be followed. And for those to be followed, they take a little bit of time. Parliament has to be in place. I know you mentioned earlier on, maybe we'll be discussing issue of Parliament being reconvened and all that. Right now, the deadline for reconvening Parliament is the 8th of September. Today is the 5th. In fact, I think we're already time barred. The people who are supposed to be vying as Deputy Speaker here don't even have sufficient time to put in their papers and everything else, because officially they haven't even collected the nomination papers from the clerks as appropriate. So we're playing some games. I mean, some games are being played over here by those with the power to play the games. And so we're asking some of these questions as Kenyans. I mean, what is the end game over here? Why has there been a delay in reconvening Parliament? Is it because somebody's waiting for the decision today and then they decide we're going to go ahead with, convene Parliament or not? And what if the 30-day passes before the president convenes Parliament? Because even right now, some of the things that ought to have happened in that period of time cannot legally happen properly. So there are question marks. Already we're being put into a constitutional gray area.
Crisis, yeah.
We spoke about the 14-day period for the Supreme Court determining the election petition and not having more than that. And that's why they have to do everything they have to do to ensure they decide that. What about the president? He was given 30 days after the general elections to convene Parliament so that Parliament can also go ahead with its business of representing the people in terms of sovereignty. He's not doing that. And the time that he has left, already we're in constitutional crisis terrain. Even as we're speaking here, I know people don't pay too much attention to what's happening in Parliament because everybody's eyes are focused on the Supreme Court, but it's another game. So I'm basically saying plenty is likely to happen. The games that are being played by the players, the key players, are all in motion at the moment. We don't know whether Uhuru, as president, is going to gazette the settings of Parliament today or not. Today is already too late. You should have done it last week. And so it's all to play for. I don't know whether at the end of this week, my colleague here is going to be the deputy speaker. I don't know. Yeah, because of the timelines.
Right.
So when you look at all these things, all these games that are being played over here, we need to have constitutionalism entrenched in all the key players. We don't have it because people are pursuing their private interests under the cover of state office.
Wow.
And I think we as a people, we need to get to the point whereby we make it extremely uncomfortable for such people to play such games with the lives of Kenyans. For example, if somebody is talking of, I'll boycott a fresh presidential election, and you've called for it, we're talking another 14 billion down the drain. The 14 billion down the drain is coming from our pockets as ordinary Kenyans. We don't want to waste all that kind of money. And therefore, even though it was not the evidence that was presented before the judges are Kenyans, they live in Kenya, those are some of the factors they'll be taking into consideration behind the scenes, even as they're writing the judgments. Are we going to subject Kenyans to a process whereby one of the main players has already declared, if Chebukati is still in office, I'm not going to participate?
The public interest clause at play in this case, as enshrined in the Constitution. And Professor, as well as you look at that, perhaps to pick it up from what it is that Wakili says, just what is in President Uhuru Kenyatta's mind as to everything and anything that is playing out in the country as it now?
I wish I knew.
I wish we all knew. Yeah, we can only.
But before I answer that one, let me join Baraka on the issue of the court reversing itself. For it to decide to overturn itself, there must be very good reasons. Yes, it has happened before. Now, but to do that, the judges have to really go out of their way to explain why they are overturning themselves. Otherwise, their ruling stands as of now. Short of that, we don't expect them to change. But if they do, we expect them to give us very good reasons as to why they should do that. Now, what is in the president's mind?
Politically speaking.
Yeah, that's, he's a politician and he's playing politics as usual. And what's the end game? One thing we can assume, he's trying as much as he can to help Raila.
Is he?
Whichever way.
Okay.
Yeah. Now we don't know whether these moves or non-moves is part of it. We don't know. But he has to have good reasons. And his advisors, whoever they are, must be giving him a lot of explanations as to why he should be doing something or not doing. Now, you then ask, who are these advisors? Because sometimes they could advise better.
Absolutely.
But there is something like that going, because he's not being erratic, although it might appear erratic. There is some logic to it. Maybe when the court pronounces itself today, he will then come out clearly and say, this is it. Yes, there has been that claim, talk, that as president, not as chairman of Azimio, but as president of the Republic of Kenya, he ought to have said something from the time, just say something. Not to say that you support Ruto or whatever it is, but to create a calming atmosphere. That one would have been very good. But maybe he's waiting for the court to pronounce itself so that now he can come and speak authoritatively on a particular, on whatever it is. If the court affirms Ruto, it is in his interest, in the national interest, for him to say the court has spoken. This is the way. Okay? So I think he's waiting for that kind of thing in order to, when he makes a statement, he should not be seen to be contradicting himself or to be going out of the way to look rather odd in that sense. So I think there are all these things going on into his mind. Others may be concerned over the voting pattern, what went wrong in some places. Could be mulling over that and then figuring out how to deal with it, because it's an issue that has to be dealt with. And I think I'm talking about the mountain.
Yes.
Yeah. You see, there is a lot of self-reassessment going on, not just in the president's mind and other people, but throughout what happened. And that is not an easy question to answer. And it requires reflection. It requires time to think through. People in the mountain and those outside the mountain looking into the mountain, they're all going to be, what happened? Is this something that can be repeated? Yes or no? If yes, why? If no, why? Either way, those things they are coming up. There's been a lot of talk about now that the president is exiting, who is now going to be the spokesman? There is that terrible word being used, kingpin. We don't like kings.
Oh, he's the spokesperson of Mount Kenya. What happened to Justin Muturi? We've not received reports that he's no longer the spokesperson.
He started well, then something happened. Yeah. He disappeared from the sea. But
we've not received reports contradicting that.
But he looked at his fortunes and he threw his weight behind Ruto. Initially, from what I understood, Muturi was supposed to be an alternative between Ruto and Raila.
Right. Okay.
And it just did not work out. And guess then he decided which way he would throw his weight. And that's why he's, I think he's also, as a person, he's a very nice person, but he's not forceful.
Okay.
And when you're not forceful, sometimes things slip away. And and he's not alone. The other politicians who look very nice, but they are very not.
Mwangi wa Iria was there.
Well,
even
in the making.
Musalia, he's not very forceful.
Musalia is very...
We have to take a short break. Allow us to take a quick short break, and then we come back on that very note, and perhaps have a message for you to the people of Parliament, because I'm sure this gentleman must, be thinking of how best we can make the best of the 13th Parliament in as much as they will be in there. And therefore you have to take the message.
Okay.
All right, after this break.
Despite being visually impaired, he is a jack of all trades. It is our quest to find answers on how to take care of children with special needs and those with disability. You do not need to see musical notes to understand music, but rather to have your soul feel the vibe.
Actually, for us to make a wheelchair, we have to take measurements of the user.
After doing my assessment, I get to know the parent, I get to know the heaviness she's carrying. Disability comes at different stages of life.
How well do you know what's happening around you? Morning Cafe with heated political debates. Baraza la Siasa.
Hiyo kitu azungumzie, angalie hali ya maisha ya watu.
Informative health discussions. Business, farming. Tasty Wednesday, Fitness Thursday, and Feel Good Friday with amazing DJs, celebs,
waimbaji, kuna comedians, alafu kuna wajinga.
and music bands every Monday to Friday from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. The next set of millionaires are farmers. As we know, agriculture has been and still is the backbone of our economy. As we traverse the different counties to meet different farmers, we ensure to get the story of how they started farming and even how they continue to penetrate the market and overcome the challenges.
Hapa, the reason why nilieka goose na si ducks. Goose, they are very easy to maintain.
A lot of farmers keep on calling, inquiring whether you're supposed to raise some seeds in the nursery or you're supposed to do them directly in the field.
The greenhouse helps us control the temperature because the temperature needs to be between 28 to 32 degrees.
Walk this journey with us every Sunday at 6:30 p.m. It's no secret, construction ain't cheap. But how do we make it affordable? Different individuals are finding ways of cutting down cost by use of pre-stressed slabs other than reinforced concrete, recycling plastics to make pavers,
The brick is stronger, it's cheaper, and it's lighter.
and recycling wastewater in your household.
What happens to my waste from the washroom, the solid waste? All that can break down.
Those are just but a few. Every Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. we talk construction.
Goes to Parliament and they make him Deputy Speaker, he will remember not to oppress people. Kind of
business of
shade
protecting them.
of opinion. Of course, Musalia Mudavadi grew up with me, went to school with me. He comes from home with me. We were in school when there were very few of us from any part of the world being at the university. So invariably we are friends. That, however, does not cloud my ability to speak with candor on matters that concern him. Because Professor Macharia Munene was saying that he needs more vigor. I think the vigor he has is sufficient. People in this country think that when you are vociferous, when you are bombastic, then that makes for good leadership. In the past, this country had very sedate leaders, people who spoke with aplomb. People like Tom Mboya spoke with aplomb. People like Agwings Kodek, my father tells me, they spoke with aplomb. They were not shoutants. These days we have people who are shoutants and they think that you excel when you drown logic in noise, when you submerge reason in turbulence.
But that was then, this is now.
It doesn't matter. The alphabet remains the same.
Okay, well.
That in 26 letters, the professor will tell you of the alphabet. All the wisdom and knowledge, and the knowledge in the world is encapsulated. You don't need to invent new alphabet to be able to communicate these things. And the alphabet of good leadership, the alphabet of good communications remains the same.
Honorable Farabali.
From Cicero and Demosthenes to...
I hope you heard Professor saying there used to be more.
There used to be more suave people, in other words.
More refined,
more
refined, more polished.
Then the shoutants arrived.
Very loud, yeah.
And this day, the louder the mouth, the emptier the head, the more
the electorate.
You seem to be accepted.
The rougher the etiquette. Yeah.
That is why I said that was then, this is now.
But that is
Muturi and Musalia are similar. They are good people. They are good Kenyans. But they lack that magnetism, that force that attracts people to them.
They are very magnetic.
Let's go to Honorable Farabali. But shelve that one. We'll talk about Mudavadi some other time.
Okay, so I will hold my peace on the rest of the issues.
Unless it's quite burning, we can give you...
You have to...
All right.
Linda,
yes, Honorable Farabali.
Linda.
Proceed.
Barack is... by the way, I asked you who else is going to be on this show.
I thought I told you and sent you the poster.
Barack is when I said, okay, I'll be there. It's always scintillating. It's always very, very interesting and exciting to be with this man. I can tell you. I miss him. Now, let me now explain something. That you remember, Kenyans, we have a problem. We usually have a bit of a memory lapse in the manner in which we transact politics. And that's why you find somebody, I was with somebody the other day in a function who said he has been elected 4 times in Parliament. I have my doubts if he's been elected 4 times, but he's been there 4 times in Parliament. And he did it on 4 different parties, you know what I mean? and you know, there was a lot of pomposity and pride. So Barack was a very close friend of Davadi. He helped him write his book.
I'm surprised that we're still on the Davadi matter, but fine.
Can I just finish?
Yes, please, yes.
Just before I go back to the very original reason why I wanted to be given an opportunity, they're very close friends, and he helped him write the book. And the moment they launched them, you know, a beautiful book together. And all the time we were saying how we can see who between him and Kalonzo was going to become the president of the Republic of Kenya come 2022, because we were creating the groundwork for OKA, One Kenya Alliance, which we did very well. And I was one of the architects. I was actually the first convener of the people to come together, and Barack was a good friend of mine before then. And then suddenly,
I thought we were still friends.
I was still good friends. And suddenly, Barack just abandoned me with a speed.
And that he has been accused of for the longest time, I know. He will always find a way of dodging that.
It's called the gift of prescience. Not patience. It's called prescience.
Yes.
Prescience.
So,
in this case, what does it do?
Foresight.
The trouble.
That you can see where the country is going. And then you tell people like Farah,
let's shift
this
together.
Is where the world is going. They don't listen. And it's very old. It's not the first time. We read in the good book, and it's also in the Quran, about Noah, the man who said, let us make the ark. And people didn't listen. And until the floods came, then they started knocking, Noah, open. You can see how they are now flocking. They are saying, Noah, open. So it's the gift of prayer.
And the defections we'll talk about as well. Proceed.
And now that, you know, I come from a community where we usually, traditionally, we never used to court ladies before marriage. We wait until the night the parents decide, and you meet your wife sometimes for the first time on the night of the wedding. But those people who, you know, good friends, we went to school together, and we were good old friends from the other parts of Kenya. And you see a very steady relationship between a boy and a girl. And it's all like, when are we going to get married? As soon as we leave this place. And then suddenly you hear, Linda, suddenly you hear somebody has jumped somewhere else, and in a matter of weeks is announcing his wedding. You know what I mean? And then you wonder what happened. I mean, I thought you were in this relationship for the longest.
Yeah.
And when did you meet this girl? I just met her the last, 3-4 weeks, 5 weeks. Yeah. And this is just an opportunity I can never miss. You know what I mean? This is the angel who I've never even dreamt of. Yeah. Because the one he dreamt of is the one he's abandoning. So that definitely is understandable in politics. Yeah. That suddenly you will see something that is
it's a quite
out of this world.
Electric shift.
And you shift. But then again, you're not allowed to have polygamy in the more Christian faith like the ones I'm describing. Yeah. For us, you can have 2, 3, marriage, 4, and then you have a second one. You can even have up to 4. So there's a way you can accommodate both that flight that you can never say no to, plus the traditional one that you have always been in love with. Now, somehow, Barack has gone the Islamic way when it comes to politics now. He's able to accommodate his 2.
I didn't know that.
Allow us to take this from the speaker and bring it to you, and then we come back to you, speaker.
No, let me just finish now on the issue of we're going to reject the next round. No.
And I wanted to build up on
I just want to talk about the thing that has been addressed very well by my 2 friends, all my 3 friends, that even if we call for a rerun. By the way, I mean, the issue of declaration of Raila as a president is completely out of the table now.
Okay.
For the very simple reason, a rerun can only a declaration of a president can only be done if there is a recount. And we've not done a recount.
Right.
I'm sure in its own wisdom, the Supreme Court found that there was not sufficient time for them to be able to do that. And that's provided for, by the way, in law now. We didn't have it before, but the amendment has accommodated that. That you could do a recount and declare the winner the winner. But the reason why I'm coming back to Eastern Right is to tell you, look, if there's going to be a rerun, we will run and run like hell, like nobody's business.
That you will not take part?
We are not going, no, we'll take part in it. Like
run,
hell, we will.
Run to win or run
to win.
And that's why.
And that was actually why I wanted us to build this from.
Let me just explain.
And you must run like heaven.
We run like hell, and we will run like, and we will run, and we will run. I know you people run.
What are the chances for these two gentlemen, and especially the Azimio team?
I think personally, I mean, from my faith, we do not talk with finality about what's to come. We say, inshallah, God willing, Allah willing. So I can never know who is going to be the winner, but I am so confident that we're going to put such an energy into play and into this field now, that we will leave our friends Barak and Professor and the rest of them watakula dust.
Why do you speak for watakula dust?
You know,
I don't know whether Professor is Kenya Kwanza.
He's been talking like that since the BBI days. And I think that is a very good point before Luchier comes in.
Yes.
Because he was there right in the middle of that.
The BBI.
The BBI, yes.
BBI.
By the way, I have never, in my heart of hearts, I've never been in favor of the BBI, but I'll tell you one thing. BBI was so, hang on a minute. I supported it.
Yes.
And I'll tell you why I supported it.
Yes.
And I was one of the very few people who was in the final planning, which was all of lawyers who were there.
Yeah.
And I think the politicians who were there were me and Wetangula and Mutula Junior and Junet. A few of us were co-opted into it for the final document. But the reason why I supported it is that the other option was that they did a digital genocide on the northern Kenya. And we were going to eliminate, based on the old constitution, 6 constituencies in northern Kenya were going to be eliminated. Through fraud, serious fraud, because the numbers of the population was so small that in a place with 50,000 voters or 30,000 voters, we had a population of 50,000 people there. In a place where the children alone going to school, there are over 40,000, 50,000, we still had a population that was so small. And the idea was to use that population numbers. You remember, the old constitutional dispensation, or rather the 2010, was that we were going to collapse constituencies together based on the population of 2019. Now, if that was going to be allowed, and it's simple, it was simple. Either accept BBI or we revert to these things and you lose the 6 constituencies. And so what was the choice for me?
Linda,
at the end of the day,
the speaker, because he's called speaker, he thinks it's his role to speak.
No. Wakili, on the matter of BBI, as well as the possibilities that it would be a win for the Azimio side, I've heard very many people say that they would rather not go for it because they will be humiliated miserably.
You mean runoff? Runoff.
I don't want to.
Azimio. Oh, you watch.
They are the speaker.
All right, proceed.
Okay.
On this one, I don't want to fall into the category of all the various opinion pollsters who were basically proved wrong by the outcome from the elections of August the 9th. And therefore, I'm hesitant. All I can say is that in my own small universe, a lot of the people who voted Azimio, whom I've interacted with, are now not keen on going to another election. They're not. They're tired, and they're just basically waiting for today. Whatever outcome comes today, they will accept it and get on with their lives. And get on with their lives, whatever outcome. But if they are being forced to go into another election, the vigor with which to fight in the next election isn't the same as for the August 9th. And therefore, on that basis, at least in the Azimio zones, even the turnout is likely to be less than what it was before. Because right now, a lot has happened. The Kenya Kwanza group have been very active, winning the propaganda war. All these defections, all the people who were part of Azimio have now moved over to Kenya Kwanza, and it's having an effect on the populace at the grassroots level. So on that basis, I will leave the speculative bit at that level. I hope you're going to give us time because we're almost out of time. So
I will.
speak
I'll
about
give
the
you time.
Parliament.
I'll give you time. Now that we're not crossing over to the Supreme Court, almost immediately I'll give
Parliament, Deputy Speaker issues and Speaker issues, I think. Yeah,
right.
I hope we'll have time for that.
I hope you will have time to be in the studio longer than the
Can I, as Azimio, can I respond to what he has just said? My learned friend here.
Dr. Barak is not so comfortable with that. But yes, you can briefly, before we loop in.
No, let me allow Barak.
Let's allow their views on whether it will be Azimio to win or not. And then you're going to
Look, Azimio is going...
Hold it, Speaker. What do you think? Will it be for Azimio? In the event that it's a runoff or a rerun or anything?
They are thinking about turning the mountain the other way around. You know, that was floated a little earlier, that His Excellency the President is still mulling about the mountain and wondering why it seems to have rebelled against him, and wondering whether there's a switch that he didn't touch and whether he could touch that. You see, the mountain, like all other regions of the country, are live things. And the mountain has, Professor Macharia Munene, its own life force, its own gravitas, its own soul. And the soul of any community is larger than any one individual. And sometimes when individuals stand in the way of communities, the communities will run through them and pulverize them, pummel them, and completely obliterate them, even politically speaking. And so sometimes when you are an intelligent person, and my grandfather used to tell me this as local wisdom from the village, sometimes when you are licked, the best thing you can do as an intelligent, wise person is to accept that you have been licked, to accept that you are down, and to accept that you will probably rise up some other day, polish yourself up, and give yourself another
is the man that we're talking about.
Opportunity. It's not just Raila Odinga. Raila Odinga was a proxy. He was a proxy. There was the Grand Master at the top. Even when you look at the schedule, the order of prominence.
Constitutionally, he's out already, the Grand Master.
Politically, he's in.
Okay.
And I do recall him speaking on vernacular radio. Fortunately, I understand Gikuyu. I excel in Gikuyu aesthetics, and I could hear him saying on vernacular radio and TV across the country that Kotire Oriandiradie, he was saying, and he said, I'm going to be at the center. He used that word, I'm going to be at the center.
I'm not going anywhere.
I'm not going anywhere. And then he said, that's why I even took Martha and placed her there. And Martha Karua, who is also my friend, because I also grew up proximate to her, had said earlier on that in 2022, the presidential election, we are going to have someone whom the president is going to choose for us. And we don't want the president to succeed himself. So he's there. One of the reasons he continues to remain in the shadows, of course, is the nursing of that forlorn hope that things can change. And students of history understand that there was an English king who was told that the waves are coming and you had better get out of the way. But he sat at the sea and continued saying, waves, don't come, I'm the king of England, I'm telling you not to come. Huh? And you know what happened to him?
We do. Professor, is it for Azimio or it will be for Kenya Kwanza in the event that we look at the two options that you presented to us, and that should be the second option, is a runoff or a rerun?
Well, if there is, it's not a rerun, it's a runoff.
It's a runoff.
It's a runoff.
You maintain that, okay?
Yes, it's a runoff. If there is a runoff, it depends on which side has more fire inside. And
in your opinion, which one has more fire? I had someone somewhere in a different platform saying that, well, Deputy President William Ruto has always been ahead. Is this the fire that you talk about?
He appears to have more fire than the other side.
Okay.
The Azimio side has a little more work to do than they did last time. And I think there's a lot of evaluation going on. What went wrong? What can be? In fact, in the discussions, the little that I know, is that there is an admission something went wrong. Now, if you have a rerun, the opportunity to correct that is what they'll be working on. And as they correct the errors, they also make sure that they do not lose the erosion. And since Ruto has been running around eroding, capturing people who officially were on the other side and now have jumped ship, like right way. Like
those are the ones who are saying, no, open. Like the independents, and some citizens from Farah's territory, a number of them. So they have jumped ship. So that's a big problem for Azimio that has to be dealt with. To convince these people not to run away or come back home, whatever that is. And then go extra to convince people on the other side to also come on this side. And more importantly, Raila would have won that thing clearly had his official supporters turned out. Well, I mean, the margin was full.
Will it not be an opportunity for them to turn out now?
Yeah, see now, but it will be a good opportunity, assuming you can hold the numbers as they were. And then in the Lake Zone, about 300 or 400,000 people should turn up to vote. Additional, yes. And then assume that on the other side it holds, they don't increase. Then you turn
you don't lose some of the old ones.
So it's a very dicey situation.
I hope this time around, okay, we're not hearing that.
Let me add this a little bit. I think there was a question of that one side has said it will not participate. I think it was good political rhetoric to incite people or excite people. And it will have no effect on what the court decides. Should the court decide a runoff, it's a runoff.
Go for it.
And who is going to supervise it? The same people.
Okay.
Chebukati and his team are the ones. So if somebody has a problem with Chebukati,
they might as well.
So you wait until the parliament comes in, starts operating, and Farah will be there. Then they can look into that small matter of reorganizing the commission after the fact.
After they've sworn in the...
Yeah, but
not before.
But who is the appointing authorities? Just a question of concern. I thought that...
It's never... anyway.
There's never... Talk about the governance. There's a lot of wishful thinking. Let me tell you something, Linda. Again, it's good old village wisdom. When you are cooking something like cassava, you make sure that there is enough fire, because we have talked about fire, and there is enough water. If you get to a point where you lose your fire burns out, or there's no water, and the cassava cools down, it doesn't matter how much fire you will put there.
Afterwards.
It will never cook. And that's where Azimio is. It will never cook.
Let's take a short break and then come back to you. After this short break.
Presidential election in this continent, and I think only the Senate.
Despite being visually impaired, he is a jack of all trades. It is our quest to find answers on how to take care of children with special needs and those with disability. You do not need to see musical notes to understand music, but rather to have your soul feel the vibe.
Actually, for us to make a wheelchair, we have to take measurements of the user.
After doing my assessment, I get to know the parent, I get to know the heaviness she's carrying, Disability comes at different stages of life.
How well do you know what's happening around you? Morning Cafe with heated political debates, Baraza la Siasa,
Hiyo kitu azungumzie, aangalie hali ya maisha ya watu.
Informative health discussions, business, farming, Tasty Wednesday, Fitness Thursday, and Feel Good Friday with amazing DJs, celebs,
waimbaji, kuna comedians, alafu
Despite being visually impaired, he is a jack of all trades. It is our quest to find answers on how to take care of children with special needs and those with disability. You do not need to see musical notes to understand music, but rather to have your soul feel the vibe.
Actually, for us to make a wheelchair, we have to take measurements of the user.
After doing my assessment, I get to know the parent, I get to know the heaviness she's carrying. Disability comes at different stages of life.
How well do you know what's happening around you? Morning Cafe with heated
Form of survival for the Azimio side.
If we have a rerun or a runoff, whichever way, we have a second round, you can rest assured that Azimio is going to be on serious, wheels. We will be on fire. The base will be fired up so much, so much that everybody is going to, we'll win the elections. Let me explain to you why. As usual, there was the typical Kenyan tendency of being with the government, run to the government to get positions, employment, and I don't know, because now that we have the devolved units who get their money from the center regardless of whether they're in the opposition or in the president's party. I don't see any reason why anybody would be jumping from one coalition or one party to the other. But be that as it may, watch what has happened in the last 6 by-elections. 6 by-elections. Mombasa was in a bad shape. We went back there and literally worked day and night, and we won. The same also happened in Kakamega. The same also happened in all the other constituencies. Kitui, Rural, yes. And we won even in Pokot, in Kalenjin land. We got our 2 members of parliament there, Posing and the other guy. The only place they won was in Rongai, which is in the center of, and of course you can understand that. For that part of it, it was not that easy. So I am confident myself that, one, the many people who did not turn up for voting will turn up. The people are sick of the flip-flopping of their own leaders. The flip-flopping, people are sick and tired of them, and they don't like it. They don't like it at all. Could not even wait until this thing is determined by the courts. The other thing that's going to happen, the moment this thing is determined by the courts in a runoff, I can assure you, many of them will be running back again to Azimio. So this time, I can safely tell you, and we'll not worry about our own constituency. Before, everybody was worried about our constituency. This time it's going to be that presidential. Every elected member of parliament will be on the ground to mobilize. And more agents on. And an agent everywhere. Everywhere there will be agents. So it's going to be a good fight. a fair fight.
So you look forward to that?
Yes, we're looking forward to that. I mean, that's the only thing we're looking forward to. The other one is, if it's going to be upheld, and like I said all along, if Ruto wins, so be it.
Let's talk about the defection.
What I've always said,
yeah,
that if he wins fair and square, and if the courts are going to say the election is going to be upheld, we'll all clap for him as our president for the next 5 years.
I do not know whether this one's amount to defections, but then again, we have seen the shift. The independence now
yes,
Kenya Kwanza has to say, as well as, well, those ones that are hailing from the Azimio side, the UDM, Kiraito Murungi. I mean, when you look at this, first of all, what does it speak about our politicians? I mean, at this early age, and I do not want to imagine that Deputy President William Ruto is all excited that these people are now shifting gears. It should be a game of interest, and therefore.
Well, basically, I mean, in Kenya, we don't have principle when it comes to politics. It's all interests. And the reason why people are shifting from Azimio to going to Kenya Kwanza is because they believe Ruto is going to be the next president, and therefore they want to be in the good books of the powers that be at whatever point in time. Now, with respect to Parliament, we haven't had our political parties act and even the Constitution being enforced when it comes to the defection issue. Now, one person who has been pretty faithful in his party when he's been in Parliament is one Deputy Speaker next to me. But I can't say the same of his colleagues. Today they'll be in Wiper, something will change. Tomorrow they'll move to something else, promoting the interests of another party, as the case may be. And what we lack is enforcement of the Constitution, because according to the Constitution, if you are now, you move from your party and join another party, you're supposed to lose your parliamentary seat.
And seek by fresh mandate, yeah.
Yes, now that hasn't happened. In fact, so bad is the scenario that even the two leaders of parliament in the outgoing parliament, Justin Muturi in the National Assembly, Ken Lusaka in the Senate, they were elected as Jubilee members, if my memory serves me right, when the 12th Parliament started. By the time it was ending, Justin Muturi was the leader of a different party altogether, his own party leader. Ken Lusaka shifted from Jubilee and moved to Ford Kenya. Now, if the law was being applied, we should have had vacancies in the headships of Parliament, not at that level. And therefore, it's no surprise that when other ordinary members were defecting, they took no action. Yet it was their responsibility to enforce, uphold, respect, and defend the Constitution. They did not do so. Now, that is what ails Kenya at the parliamentary level. And unless we can have legislators who are going to enforce and apply the law, then this law, I mean, we have this Constitution, somebody can just say it's just a piece of paper. We haven't internalized it to put it to practice. And we need to have a radical overhaul in the way we manage our politics. If we simply enforce this Constitution, if members are called to account for their conduct, and maybe 1, 2, or 3 defectors pay the ultimate price, they have to go for fresh elections. And I remember in the Parliament, Deputy Speaker came into 1992, President Moi used to play that game. And not all people who defected to KANU came back from via KANU. They lost the seats.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we need that to happen so that we instill political discipline. We're supposed to be a multi-party state, democratic state, but we're not actually living up to the ideals of our Constitution. So that needs to change. And I hope the incoming speakers of both houses of Parliament will this time around enforce the law. If we just have the same old figures who are there, who are flouting the law simply for political interest, then we still don't have the right headship of Parliament, and maybe we need to look for somebody outside, maybe Kenneth Marende or Moses Tangula, or somebody outside Amason Kingi. I don't know who Azimio is now fronting for the Senate. We need fresh blood, somebody who's going to uphold, defend, and respect this Constitution of ours at that parliamentary level so that we begin to have an altered culture in our politics in Kenya.
And before we delve deep into that, Professor, that the likes of Martha Karua then will point a finger at Deputy President William Ruto for, welcoming these people to this other side as they shift gears, as the independents say that now we're going to sell the agenda of Kenya Kwanza. Just how much of an undoing is that for him? And not just about Martha Karua, but generally, what's the
undoing for Ruto or for
Yes,
Martha?
for Ruto and all that, because it shouldn't be about him. But then again, there are people who say you should not glorify this. Why do you allow them to shift gears? While we know very well that they were elected on this basis as independent, as members of different parties, and now they shift gears immediately, even before the government is formed.
See, politics is very dynamic, and everything is political. I think Chief Justice Mutunga is the one who likes occasionally saying everything is political. That even some judgments, sometimes you can look at
Chief Justice
Mutunga.
Mutunga, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
You know, he's now, he has a new title. He's called what? Emeritus?
Emeritus.
But he does speak openly and say that a lot of things, even judgments, can be political.
Yes.
Because you have to look at the environment. So William Ruto is not doing anything wrong in playing politics. Because that's what he's doing. And saying that if he's affirmed as the elected person, and he would like to have as many politicians on his side in parliament than he probably has. Today, as per party, his party has the largest number, but not the majority of everything. So he'd like to make that other coalition to be something bigger. It is normal politics. It is also normal politics for Martha to complain. Because, you know, when you see people disappearing from your side, you're not supposed to keep quiet. You say, hey, wait up, what's going on? Why are you doing this thing?
Right.
So if we see it in the context of politics, then it should not be a surprise that they're going to be doing this and that maneuvers. Who wins at the end is another matter, because that's the norm. At the end of it, especially after today, the pattern will be followed. Will be very clear. If the court says have a runoff because something went wrong with the numbers, then there might be a stemming, people might stop shifting. But again, it might also increase, because if they think the pattern is this the way, the vibrancy with which people will go to vote next round, if there is a next round, is really emotions. Farah here is talking about how they are going to arouse a lot of emotions to ensure that people show up.
Fire up the base.
And you can be sure that the other side is also saying that they are going to have even more fire. When you listen to people saying, if there is a runoff, then now you are going to show people dust. They're really going to do it. Which of the side is going to really do it is another matter.
Wow.
And I think, as I try to point out, Azimio needs to work a little harder than he did. And some of the stories we hear, Farah, that there were no agents. And that they were not paid. You didn't pay them, so they could not show up. Those kind of small things should not be arising.
Right.
Because if they did happen, then there's something wrong.
There was something
All right.
wrong.
Okay.
There was something
Barak,
wrong.
the 13th Parliament.
You jumped me again.
Did I? You are the one who started.
No.
Let him go.
You want
Let him go.
This is now Barak, the 13th Parliament.
I've just been hearing this gentleman talking about fire, brimstone, calm hell, calm high waters. I've just been quiet here. But as I said, he's the speaker. So he thinks he should speak and we should just listen. You see, when you listen to the speaker, you hear a lot of bravado and triumphalism. And it is nothing new.
Confidence to
It's
the
the, yeah, but the other day they were
We just proved it.
they were wearing lugubrious expressions in Meru. Yesterday they were looking like they had swallowed live bees, and those bees were doing something in their oral cavities. Yeah, so easy speaker. As you are aware, you want to be elected speaker,
Yes.
and when you get to parliament, you have got to persuade all the parties in parliament to elect you. Yes. I'm not very sure whether Isaac is completely right. Rightness can be on a continuum. So I'm not so sure whether he's very right about the defection of speakers or lack of it, because the way I understand it, the speaker is elected by the members,
Yes.
and that speaker will ordinarily be a person who qualifies to be elected as a member of parliament. And one of the requirements would be that the speaker would invariably be a member. I'm not so sure whether that speaker should be a member.
They're being fronted
whether
by
that
parties.
speaker should be a member of a party, because in parliament we have people who are not members of political parties.
Can I clarify that very briefly?
I seem to be getting it wrong
allow
because
it.
they all the time want to...
No, Barack, is just your point.
Yes.
One of the requirements is that a speaker is a member of parliament. And to be a member of parliament, one of the requirements is that...
No. It's not.
No. When you become a speaker, you are a member of parliament.
Ex officio.
Yes. No problem. But you are a member of parliament. And part of the qualifications for being a member of parliament is that you must either be sponsored by a political party or you vie as an independent candidate. Yeah. And therefore, these two speakers, outgoing speakers, were members of the Jubilee and were sponsored by the Jubilee. Yeah, and that is the capacity in which they got into parliament. So that is a requirement under Article 99, 1C. So you can refer to that.
And it was almost a dead end for Lusaka until he was revived by the Jubilee. And in fact, most of the time he would be reminded that he owes, allegiance to the party Jubilee.
Yes.
Oh, okay, these are multiple. These are multiple barrels.
Barack, proceed.
But I consider myself equal to the assignment. Number one, the speaker is elected according to the standing orders of the House, and the speaker is a person who qualifies to be elected as a member of parliament.
But is not.
Yes.
He's not a member.
But is not a member of parliament.
He does not become a member of parliament once he's in parliament?
Could even be, because I think we are bringing in different shades of opinion. For example, in the old dispensation, a little older dispensation, my brother Kenneth Otiato Marende was elected member of parliament for Mhaya constituency. But ODM fronted him to be elected speaker. And they also fronted Farah Maalim to be deputy speaker. And since the office of speaker makes that person ex officio member, because that particular aspect migrated into the Constitution of Kenya 2010, the speaker does not have to be a member of parliament at the time of being elected.
Yes.
Even I could offer myself to be elected as speaker.
You do not have to be fronted by a party.
No,
yes.
I have to persuade the parties to vote for me. That's why we have seen in the past people like George Anyona, having lost the election, attempted to be elected speaker, but they did not succeed. And so even this bravado and triumphalism, whose residue still occupies the psyche of my good brother and friend, Farah Maalim, he needs to taper it down, because he's going to need to persuade people from both sides of the coalitions to vote for him. And I hear a lot of wishful and even wistful thinking, a certain almost regretful longing, baying for the moon, and the moon is gone. So that if I don't sit here and assume that I was a judge of the Supreme Court, I'd advise people to watch and wait for the decision this
the court, yes, Supreme Court,
later today, when I suspect, for reasons which I have enumerated here, and I think Lochier and Professor Macharia Munene have also talked about the same, it could easily end up as a fait accompli. And therefore we start talking about the future dispensation. And for me, therefore, with regard to Parliament, I would have only one primary concern, that Parliament is not going to be whipped again from State House. That has been the tradition, especially this past 5
previous, yeah.
years. Mwalimu Julius Nyerere used to say, Ikulu ni mahali patakatifu. And that sanctity of that Ikulu needs to be respected. President Uhuru Kenyatta, His Excellency the President, was in the habit of summoning members of Parliament to State House to read to them the Riot Act. I would hope that if Dr. William Ruto becomes the next president, he would refrain from that practice of bringing members of Parliament to State House to whip them and to tell them this is the straight and narrow path which you must follow. That he would even organize the parliamentary committees from State House, and that those who do not toe that line face fire and brimstone. I would hope that the country does not go back to that place, and that the first thing which a member of Parliament does is to hold in the right hand that which they consider to be sacrosanct. And they pledge that they are going to serve conscientiously. I would hope that conscience would be allowed space in the 13th Parliament.
The 13th Parliament, Honorable Farham.
I couldn't agree more with the final the
submissions on the Parliament.
Submissions by my good old friend Barack Muluka on this. Let me tell you one thing. There are two things that we need to protect in this country. One, as he put it, as the learned friend put it, the place of political parties in this country. A political party is an ideological persuasion that is anchored in a manifesto and in party ideals. It's not something to be shifted from place to place. So when you are a member of a political party, give it all to that party, regardless of whether you're going to be the only opposition member of Parliament. The other day, the people talk to you and tell you, oh, people have all shifted to Kenya Kwanza. I told them, listen, even if Raila shifts to Kenya Kwanza, I would stay in my Azimio, and I'll be the only opposition member.
You know, someone sent a text and asked, why is it that Honorable Farham Maalim is always supporting?
Yes.
Right, even when it's clear that... Someone asked that.
and I'm one person who has had the maximum disagreement with Raila Odinga in the party. We were together in there. The only person who could stand up to him and tell him, you're wrong. You can't do this. And then, by the way, we as a result of that, we have remained very good friends. You know, whenever people talk about Farham Maalim team, we say, leave alone Farham. Yeah, I know him. Even when I left the party and joined Wiper, for reasons that I explained to you fully. So the point I'm trying to tell you is, as of today, and if there's a runoff, I will go there on the ground and fight very hard for Raila Odinga to become the next president of this country.
Why?
But if we lose, I have my reasons.
The 6th.
If I lose, we lose, then we will support the president, who this contest right now is going to be between Ruto and him, as our head of state, who is the symbol of our sovereignty.
Correct.
You get my point? A country has got to respect its own leadership. But when the contestation is there, you have to have your differences, you have your political party ideals, you have your association. By the way, a political party or a coalition is a private members party, what do you call an association?
A club.
It's a club. It's a club. So work with your club members, grab power if you can, run this country in the best possible way. You're either going to make a good, take a good advantage of that, what do you call opportunity, or you're going to mess yourselves and Kenyans are going to throw you out 5 years down the line. Now, whichever happens, I am for dignified party system in this country that essentially allows democracy to be enjoyed to the maximum. And for us to be proud as Kenyans. Now, as the Deputy Speaker, there's a difference between the member of Parliament for the DAP and fire the Deputy Speaker of the National.
It looks like you're almost certain on this, okay? Yes.
No. I'm talking about history. I'm not talking about this one.
All right. So
no. This one I don't know.
Okay.
This one I don't know. This one anybody could become the Deputy Speaker.
Right.
I'm going to throw in my hat there, and if I lose it, so be it. And if I win, I'll as the Deputy Speaker when we were there with Marende. Far too many times did we stand firm on our grounds and said, we're not going to be swayed by party loyalty and sacrifice the national patriotism and the role we're supposed to play in Parliament. You are an impartial arbiter there, and you're supposed to protect the country. You understand my point? To the extent where we got a lot of wrappings from our party members, and we stood our ground on many occasions. I say, no, this is how it's going to be. We will run this country in accordance, run this house in accordance with the standing orders, in accordance with our constitution and our laws, and in the best interest of the Republic of Kenya. Not in the best interest of ODM, because we were both from ODM that time. You understand my point? And that basically was the way I personally have been used to transact my own politics from a very young age when I came in here, barely above 30, and now I'm an old man. So, and I have never regretted that. Let me tell you one thing. And I don't see any reason why a member of parliament should be running from one party to the other party, running to a president. What for? Now, you will also observe many of these people who are running to Kwanza, Kenya Kwanza, after the declaration of the IEBC of the presidency of, or rather the victory of William Ruto, either led by former governors. You get my point?
After their 2 terms.
After their 2 terms, or whatever. And basically there's going to be a lot. You see, the maximum work that should be done by the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission in this country is to go and do a forensic audit of how the county governments were run for the last 10 years. It's preposterous. It is unimaginable corruption of the highest order. And make sure, like they did in Nigeria, get 20, 30 former governors into prison. Into prison. They did that in Nigeria, you know that.
Well, devolution is another matter that perhaps we find time to talk about.
And one way of trying to forestall that is being on the right side of politically correct. And tomorrow, if Raila becomes the president, by the way, through a runoff, they'll all run again, troop again to Raila. I mean, this has been the hallmark of our politics for a very long time. But that has to end one way or the other.
Professor, in a very few minutes, the 13th Parliament, so we have about 5 minutes to exit this space.
Well, we would hope, I would agree with the Speaker, that members of Parliament, the incoming ones, would, and even Barack was putting, would be a little more honest than the
last
people,
one.
The
last 2 parliaments.
If it was true that they were exchanging notes in the toilet, that should be a thing. That the way they vote is because they have been talked to nicely. It's terrible. And then the Parliament passing bills or laws they have not read. And then after they say, oh, we didn't know that. So what were you doing there? So we would assume that the incoming Parliament would have people who have conscience and who have common sense. And although they should follow the party line up to a point, because there are basic things about the party, you go along. That's why you're in the party. But when there is a conflict between the party position and your conscience and the interest of the country, let me say, the interest of the country and the interest of the party, the interest of the country should prevail. Now, I don't know whether all the MPs we are going to have that capacity. And maybe they need to go for induction, Mr. Speaker, on making clear what it is that constitutes national interest. And once they know that, you reduce the chances of people voting blindly and blundering and being made slightly richer in some corner somewhere in order to vote. That kind of thing needs to end so that we then have a good, vibrant parliament which can discuss national issues in a sober way.
Wakili, wind it up for us, the 13th Parliament. I know you made submissions also on that, but just to close it up.
Essentially, I just want the new parliamentarians to live up to their oath of office, which is to respect, defend, and uphold the Constitution of Kenya. As has been said by all my colleagues, put the country, put the nation ahead of your own personal, private, selfish interests. We shouldn't be having the scenarios, as has just been spoken by Professor Macharia, whereby we sell the public interest for the sake of 5,000 shillings or 10,000 shillings, which somebody gives you on how you should vote. Let us uphold the ideals of this nation. Let us bring back the national values and principles of governance in Article 10 of the Constitution. Let us be a good example to the nation. Right now, parliamentarians do not rank very high in the psyche of everybody else in the nation. We need to restore what used to take place some generations ago. And as long as everybody does what they're supposed to do, that is what we're calling for.
Can I just add one thing on what Barak said?
I thought you wanted us to be out of this space.
No, we'll be out. There's only one thing I want to both agree with Barak Maluka and also correct. Barak, the Constitution was, as you put it, you could run for Speaker of the House when you're a member of Parliament, but then you lose that seat immediately and there's a by-election.
Yes,
that's how Marende did it for the Speaker, but that has since changed. The new Constitution, the Constitution 2010, which was done all by lawyers, you know what I mean, with only one person was a sociologist, the Committee of Experts. It's now a requirement that you cannot run for that if you're a member of Parliament. That's why I don't know how my good old friend, who's still my friend, Moses Wetangula, is going to deal with it. He has to resign, and the resignation has got to go through the Speaker. And then you run for the seat after that. Once the speaker acknowledges that is in receipt of your resignation, is when then you can run for it. Now, if the election is going to fall on the same day for both houses, then Wetangula is technically knocked out of that.
Well, that is Article 103 of the Constitution dictates that you to resign, it has to go through the Speaker with the approval of the Speaker.
And it must be gazetted.
So now
interesting to watch.
It's a bit of an issue right now for my good old friend. But the other thing I wanted to say also is that the requirement is that President should call for the sitting of Parliament within a month.
Yes.
So the last day that he can call for is up to and including the 9th.
It's Thursday.
No, the 9th is when...
This
8th.
It should be the 8th around. It should be this week.
Yes.
That's the bottom.
On the 8th, Thursday.
Okay.
30 days.
Yes, it should be this week.
30 days falls on the 8th, yeah? Okay.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. Last speaker, Honorable Member of Parliament-elect, Dadaab constituency, Farah Maalim, as well as Isaac Aluo Chair, Alternative Dispute Resolution Experts. Wakili, thank you so much. Dr. Barak Maluka, right next to Wakili, Strategic Communication Advisor. And lastly, Professor Macharia Monene, Political Historian. Gentlemen, it's been a great honor. Lots of feedback. This, we cannot go through all of them. But Honorable Farah Maalim, you might need to consider or reconsider your position of always supporting.
I not only support this. There's one time when I did not support him because there was no Odinga on the ballot. I supported his father in 1992 and got the maximum votes he had in the northern Kenya from my constituency. And I then supported him.
Kibaki? Kibaki Tosha?
No, I never supported Kibaki.
Okay.
I never supported Kibaki. Kibaki proved to be one of the best presidents. I've respected him so much, and we were together when I was the deputy speaker, and somebody who considered me like a son, but I never supported him. I supported, the only time I did not vote for an Odinga is when they were not on the ballot, which was 2002, and then I supported Nyachai. We're together with Nyachai.
You're a Baba diehard.
The late Nyachai, yes.
I can almost guess that there's not a single time your vote has counted for quite a long time.
Yes.
In terms of you getting to elect someone who then comes